Chapter 411. Eldest Miss Ning led her people and boldly sat at the main table in the center. The remaining Omni-faction disciples surrounded Ning Bihuan's table and also took up 2 or 3 tables. The small feast was set up next to the flowery pavilion in the valley. There were a total of 26 tables, and the dishes could be considered very sumptuous. Xixia Valley had always lived in seclusion, so there was quite a bit of grain stored in the valley. It was rare for them to be able to have a good meal, so the Holy Water sect disciples hurried over early, planning to occupy a good seat. In the end, they saw Ning Bihuan's corpse-like face staring gloomily at them. To be more precise, Ning Bihuan's stiff and cold corpse-like face was facing Mo Lian. Her serene eyes unwaveringly stared at the youth in front of her. She almost instantly recognized this youth as the person who had appeared in her younger sister's remnant life lamp. Her deep gaze stared straight at the youth, but she didn't receive the slightest response. The youth's gentle gaze landed on the little girl beside him the entire time, so how could he notice Ning Bihuan's gaze? The little girl had changed into a pink robe today. The little fellow, who always wore plain clothes, appeared even more pinkish and tender after changing into a small robe, as if she was carved from jade. Mo Lian didn't notice Ning Bihuan's overbearing gaze, but the little fellow caught it at once. At this time, Ning Bihuan's gaze had already shifted to the little girl. When Arbor clearly saw Ning Bihuan's appearance, she couldn't help but be taken aback. This girl seemed a bit familiar. Her face was oval, and her willowy eyebrows were slightly curved to her temples. She wore a cyan robe, and her entire person appeared to be in high spirits. Ning Bihuan saw her somewhat bewildered appearance and knew that she had already forgotten about her idiotic younger sister, Ning Bifan. It wasn't that she cared much about that idiot. She just didn't like people directly climbing over their Omni-faction's head to behave atrociously. She, the one surnamed Ning, wasn't that easy to talk to. Ning Bihuan curled her lips and looked straight at the little girl. Do you feel that my face is a bit familiar? Half a month ago, you killed someone in the adventurer base near the Great Swamp. She had the same face as me. That girl was my twin sister, Ning Bifan. Realization dawned on Arbor's face. He nodded at Ning Bihuan and said, I remember now. It's that woman who put her face in front of me and kept telling me to hit her. After I hit her, she asked me why I dared to hit her. She's such a strange person. The senior sisters of the Holy Water sect didn't understand the reason, but they could understand how hilarious it was when they heard the little fellow's explanation. Ning Bihuan naturally didn't know that such a thing had happened at the adventurer's base, but she had always understood the extent of her brainless younger sister's stupidity. She didn't doubt the young lady's words. Are you here to avenge your sister? Arbor looked at her and asked. Ning Bihuan sneered, do I look like such a bored person? If an idiot dies, then so be it. I'm here to challenge him. Ning Bihuan's finger pointed straight at the youth Mo Lian. A bellicose flame danced in her eyes. You're very strong. Youth. I want to challenge you. When the people from the Daybreak sect, the Heavenly Tao sect, and the other 4 factions came over, they just happened to see Ning Bihuan pointing at Mo Lian and issuing a challenge. Everyone couldn't help but fall silent. The competition hadn't started yet, but there were already people issuing challenges one after another. Young Master Mo isn't a member of our Holy Water sect. He only came to watch the competition. Chapter 412. Su Shanshan coldly rejected Ning Bihuan's challenge. Ning Bihuan, your opponent is us. Don't get the wrong opponent. Ning Bihuan pursed her lips noncommittally and stood up to look straight at Arbor. All right then. After the competition ends, I hope to battle with young Master Mo and see who's better. Arbor was baffled. Miss Ning, why are you staring at me? Why are you staring at me when you want to challenge young Master Mo? Am I not young Master Mo? Ning Bihuan was also a bit gloomy. She originally didn't come to seek justice for her idiotic younger sister. From beginning to end, she was willing to participate in this competition with only one goal, to not let anyone bully her Omni faction and tell anyone from the 3 sects and 5 factions that her Omni faction couldn't be bullied. In addition, she wanted to challenge the white-clothed young master. She saw that powerful youth in the miniature of her younger sister's life lantern, and this youth practically ignited all the fighting blood in her body at that time. She wanted to fight. She was a person who lived for the sake of fighting. Hello, stoic-faced miss. Do you think I want to look at you while speaking? In reality, that young Master Mo of yours didn't even spare a glance at other people out of the corner of his eye from beginning to end. She only spoke to Arbor because she had no other choice. Mo Lien, someone wants to challenge you. The little girl tugged at his sleeve. I'm not free. Mo Lien held the little girl's small hand and followed the Holy Water sect group to take their seats. You'll definitely accept my challenge. Ning Bihuan stood up and stared darkly at Mo Lien. She threw down this sentence with a stern face, but the latter completely threw it to the back of her mind. Shixia Valley's Valley Master hurried over after hearing the news. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he saw that the 3 sects and 5 factions were all present and were chatting softly, clinking cups, drinking wine, and eating. He had just received news that eldest Miss Ning had quarreled with the Holy Water sect disciples, so he thought that this group of young ladies would turn the entire banquet upside down again. Unexpectedly, the scene he saw was so harmonious. It truly surprised and delighted the Valley Master, and he almost wanted to shed a tear for himself. It truly wasn't easy to be a competent peacemaker. After 3 rounds of wine, everyone was 80% full. On a whim, Shixia Valley's Valley Master ordered someone to bring over the lot pot and said to everyone with a chuckle, seeing that everyone from the 3 sects and 5 factions has gathered, I might as well bring forward the competition. If eldest Miss Ning doesn't have any objections, how about we set the competition for the day after tomorrow? Ning Bihuan waved her hand, a stiff smile hanging on her stiff little face. We martial artists aren't that particular. The day after tomorrow is the day after tomorrow, it's up to you. Miss Ning is truly straightforward. Shixia Valley's Valley Master was overjoyed. Dear ancestors, hurry up and finish the competition and scram. After the Valley Master signaled with his eyes, Shixia Valley's disciples hastily carried the 8 bamboo tubes to the disciples of the 3 sects and 5 factions. There are 120 pairs of numbers here. If you draw the corresponding number, go to our disciples and register. The Valley Master explained with a smile, then let all the disciples of the 3 sects and 5 factions draw lots. In any case, it was all up to luck, so no one paid much attention to it. One by one, they reached into the lot pot and took out a lot. 2 Shixia Valley disciples sat on the side to register the lot and name. Our dear Chiao Mu abruptly stood up and pattered over to Daybreak's sect's table. Duan Yu immediately turned around in excitement, and his peach blossom eyes blinked as he asked, Jojo, you were looking for me? Chapter 413. I'm not looking for you. Arbor shook her head and looked at Mu Liangde, who was sitting at the same table as Duan Yu. Mu Liangde stood up and smiled at the little girl in a self-righteous manner. He asked amiably, Little miss, you're looking for me again. Duan Yu pursed his lips at him. Who's looking for you? The little girl is looking for you to beat you to death. Emisham, she's looking for you. Arbor nodded. What's your number? This one is number 82. Mu Liangde looked at the number in his hand and smiled good-naturedly at Arbor. He wasn't afraid of this little girl. Even if the little fellow said she wanted to beat him to death on the day of the competition, he would only treat it as a joke. What a joke! This little girl even shamelessly boasted that she wanted to beat him to death in the first round of the competition, ha ha ha. It was hilarious just thinking about it. She really was a little girl spoiled rotten by her elders. It wasn't a good thing to go out and gain experience with such blind confidence. She would be killed by her own arrogance and stupidity. That's right, he just didn't believe that he, Mulyangda, could be defeated by a little girl with his skills. Ha, don't joke around. He wasn't a simple mystic cultivator. Everyone in the sect knew of his abilities. Even his master, Wei Qing, had to take his identity into consideration and flatter him a lot of times. Jojo. Duan Yu pulled her aside and whispered to her, "This Mulyangda is famous in the sect for being a smiling tiger. I heard that he has some connections with Guanlon City's talisman patrician family. He seems to be from a side branch of that family. He has many powerful talismans in his possession." As he spoke, he stuffed a small box of concealed weapons into her hand. "If you really fight him, don't let him throw talismans. Feed him a bunch of shooting stars first and beat him to death." Talisman practitioner. The little fellow was startled, but she took the box that Duan Yu stuffed into her hand and nodded repeatedly. Number 82 was it? She first ran back to her own table and browsed through all the senior sisters' hands. There was no number 82. Then she ran to Situ Yi's table and had him check if anyone in the Heavenly Dao sect had that damn number 82. "Jojo, do you really want this number 82? Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but tease, "Then what if the person holding number 82 isn't willing to exchange with you? For example, if you picked a lot, your opponent would be stronger. Naturally, others wouldn't be willing to trade with you." Xiao Mu cast him a glance, and her small brows creased deeply again. Troublesome. There's no 82. Situ Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he returned after asking around. Arbor was a little angry. He turned around and glanced at Bailey Shi, who was sitting in the Purple Firmament faction seat. He frowned and thought for a while, then ran over on his own. "Do you have 82? The little fellow poked Bailey Shi's arm and stared at him. Bailey Shi glanced at her and did not refuse. However, when he went to ask his fellow disciples, there was a trace of helplessness in his eyes. His hard work paid off, and he finally got the answer from Bailey Shi. The holder of lot number 82 was a 15 or 16-year-old young girl from the Violet Firmament Guild. Her face was round like a delicate red apple. Miss Chiao looked down at her lot number. "I'm number 53. Are you willing to exchange with me?" "Sure, it's not registered anyway." Yuan Jixin, the girl who picked up lot number 82, very straightforwardly handed over the lot number in her hand. In fact, the Valley Master had long seen everything. Cough, this was clearly blatant cheating. Chapter 414. Why didn't anyone stop them? And so many shameless people even popped out to support them. Valley Master expressed that he was very stifled. Seeing them act so openly, he could only choose to be blind. "Thank you." The little girl thanked him politely, took the number from the other party, and handed her number 53 to the other party. Then she added, "If you can't beat that number 53, I'll help you beat him back later. I'll help you vent your anger." Yuan Jixin giggled. Number 53 took that number and glanced at it, silently speechless. Bailey Shi's mouth twitched helplessly. "Miss Chiao, number 53 is standing next to you." What a coincidence. The little girl turned her head and saw the face of an ordinary passerby. Number 53 was also a Purple Firmament faction disciple, but he was considered one of the weaker ones among the many senior brothers and sisters. So when the little girl's gaze shot over, number 53 hurriedly raised his hands and said in exasperation, "Don't worry, little girl. I definitely can't beat senior sister Yuan Jixin. Once senior sister makes a move, it'll only be a matter of 2 or 3 moves, and I'll immediately roll off the stage. This joker. Everyone laughed and scolded. Yet the little fellow heaved a sigh of relief and returned to her table after bidding farewell to Bailey Shi and the others. Seeing her return, Mo Lian couldn't help but chuckle softly. The little fellow finally got her wish after busying herself for a round, but why was it so interesting? Mo Lian propped up his chin with one hand and turned his head to look at her with an uncontrollable smile. If that girl with number 82 isn't willing to exchange with you, what do you plan to do? Our dear Xiao Mu was expressionless, but her 2 small brows furrowed again. That Miss Yuan is pretty good. She's not a man, so I can only drop it. Everyone was a mystic cultivator, and Mo Lian and Arbor's conversation wasn't low. The youths at the nearby tables all heard it, and they couldn't help but widen their eyes when they heard this. What did she mean? So what if he was a man? Men were discriminated against, right? Wei Nanfeng chuckled as he squeezed over with a wine jug in his hand. If number 82 is a man and he's unwilling to exchange with you, from your tone, you plan to beat him up overnight and directly snatch away the number? Our dear Xiao Mu nodded honestly. It couldn't be helped. She planned to do that from the start. However, number 82 was a girl, so it was better to be more refined. PFT, Wei Nanfeng winked at Mo Lian and said meaningfully, I feel that this little lady is even more mischievous than your you. She needs to be taught. When Murong Sun heard this, she immediately shielded her. What? You have an opinion? I teach my disciple too well. Wei Nanfeng hurriedly flattered, indeed, indeed. Peak Master Murong, this disciple has misspoken. Humph. Murong Sun rolled her eyes at him and reached out to pick up food for her youngest disciple. My dear disciple, you were busy the entire night and didn't eat much. Here, eat more. Your body is still growing. Peak tt eat Murong ti chow ti eat teas to eat teat, ti chow, tt. After a short while, the small plates were piled up into a small hill. Come, Jojo, eat more. Mo Lian placed the chopsticks in her hand and looked at her with a grin. You'll only have the strength to beat people when you're full. Everyone. Young Master Mo's style was off. If Hui Feng was here, he would definitely chuckle and say, sorry, His Highness has always treated the little girl like this. Chapter 4:15. 2 days later. Everyone had recuperated until they were abnormally full of energy. One team after another set out to the northern part of Xixia Valley, which was an extremely spacious field. The forest here wasn't as lush, so the valley master had long made preparations. He ordered people to set up a large stage and also set up many seats for everyone. The 10 or so silk seats in the front row were naturally prepared for the sect masters and elders of the various sections. The disciples each sat on a row of small square stools in the back row. Some extremely bored people even prepared their own tea and snacks, intending to eat while watching the show. The valley master set up a gong on the side in imitation. A male disciple of Xixia Valley tied a red ribbon around his head and held a gong hammer with a fluttering red ribbon in his hand. The valley master had just sat down at the head seat in the center and exchanged pleasantries with the peak masters and sect masters beside him with a smile on his face. Just as he was about to announce the rules and call out the numbers, he heard the gong ring with a clang. Everyone. The freaking valley master should be feeling very depressed right now. He hadn't even started calling out the numbers, yet that idiot disciple had already started ringing the gong. Xixia Valley's valley master turned his head to glare at that idiot disciple from afar. That disciple stood there with an innocent expression and smiled foolishly at him while holding the gong hammer. I'll first announce the rules. We'll proceed according to the order of the lots. As long as one side concedes defeat, the competition will end. If you can still fight without admitting defeat, then continue fighting. We're all members of the 3 sects and 5 factions, so it's best if we don't overdo it. Shishia Valley's Valley Master laughed. Alright, now, let's invite number 1 onto the stage. The competition begins. Everyone looked towards that young disciple holding the gong hammer. That idiot didn't hit the gong when it was supposed to and kept staring at the Valley Master as if waiting for his order. The Valley Master waited for a long time but didn't hear the gong ring. He turned his head to glare at that disciple and roared angrily, "Why don't you hit it?" Pfft! Everyone roared with laughter. With a clang from the gong, the 2 disciples number 1 flew onto the stage with vigorous postures and started exchanging blows without another word. When mystic cultivators battled, the strength of mystic energy was to a large extent. At this time, mystic cultivators had yet to realize the importance of mystic consciousness, so they could only see mystic energy flying back and forth and smashing directly at the other party. Albert took a cursory glance at the mystic skills used by these 2 mystic cultivators and could roughly determine that they were mid-level mystic skills. Most of the mystic skills that were circulating in the market were elementary mystic skills. For people like them who had joined a sect, being able to cultivate intermediate mystic skills was already considered pretty good. Only Master's personal disciples, those kind of disciples with decent talent, would be able to practice the sect's high-level profound skills, and even be able to go to the treasure pavilion to browse the higher-level ones. In a battle of profound skills, when a high-grade profound skill went up against a mid-grade profound skill, needless to say, the high-grade profound skill would definitely have the upper hand. However, the 2 people in front of him were displaying mid-grade profound skills, so it would depend on their comprehension of the profound skills. After a smart person finished reading the profound skill, not only would he be able to completely comprehend it, he would even be able to comprehend some more profound skills based on this foundation. However, it was clear that these 2 people weren't particularly intelligent, so their mystic skills were displayed in accordance with the norm. One trained his hands, while the other cultivated a mystic skill that trained his head. Therefore, when the other party clawed at him, that person always liked to use his head to block it. This made our dear Chiao Mu laugh in her heart, and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up. Number 2. Holy Water Sect's disciple Qin Hanzi vs. Ghost Faction's disciple Ping Zhang. The Valley Master picked up the number plate beside him and announced. Chapter 4:16. The Shishia Valley disciple forcefully struck the gong. Clang! After the gong sounded, Qin Hanzi and the Ghost Faction disciple, Ping Zhang, flew onto the stage and cupped their fists in greeting. A venomous glint flashed through the Ghost Faction disciple's eyes, and his gaze subconsciously landed on his junior sister. Cho and senior brother will definitely avenge you today, junior sister. Everyone from the Holy Water sect deserves to die. If it weren't for you guys, how could his junior sister, Cho-eun, be such a strong-willed girl, submit herself to that ugly and sickly old man? Ping Zhang pulled out an item as thin as an iron wire. This was his level 7 mystic weapon, Mystic Spider Silk. It was incomparably sharp and also extremely good at concealment. Usually, only when the Mystic Spider Silk was right in front of the enemy's eyes would they be startled to realize that it had slit their throats. Ping Zhang took out his mystic weapon right off the bat. He had made up his mind to make Qin Hanzi bleed on the spot within 3 moves. Qin Hanzi sneered and suddenly summoned her exquisite awl from her conscious with a shake of her hand. The exquisite awl was triangular, so the sharpness of its tip was definitely stronger than the Mystic Spider Silk. Moreover, this awl also had a wondrous use, which was that the awl head could suddenly lengthen. Only when the enemy died would they realize this point. This level 9 mystic weapon was a treasure she had dug out from Maple Pavilion. It was quite handy, and she normally wouldn't take it out to use unless it was an important situation. But now, since the other party had also taken out a mystic weapon, could it be that she had to passively take a beating? Humph. None of the Holy Water Sect's members were afraid of trouble. Ping Zhang channeled mystic energy into his hands and covered the mystic spider silk. He took a step forward and directly swiped it at Chenhanzi's neck. When this move was used, Lu Yun's eyes turned completely gloomy. This ghost faction disciple clearly wanted to take her disciple's life from the start. Doya nervously clenched her hands. Although she didn't make a sound, her large, watery eyes clearly revealed her anxiety. Chenhanzi fell backward on her back and suddenly threw out the exquisite awl in her hand. Upon closer inspection, the awl's tip collided with the mystic spider silk, and it actually created a tiny spark. Chenhanzi's body turned upside down and quickly kicked out twice. Borrowing the force of the kick, she flipped over and landed steadily on the ground with a backflip. The exquisite awl once again returned to her hand, and a ray of profound energy light burst out from the sharp awl, sweeping out an arc-shaped energy ripple as it charged straight at Ping Zhang. Ping Zhang repeatedly took a few steps back, and he was barely able to stand firm when he felt a sweetness in his throat, causing him to fiercely swallow down a strand of surging blood. In the depths of his eyes, which were covered by the gray cloth, there was a hint of killing intent. "Come out, thousand-faced venomous spider." A trace of viciousness flashed across Ping Zhang's eyes. "Holy Water Sect disciple, you forced me. If it weren't for the fact that you were so insensible and refused to be executed obediently, why would I summon the thousand-faced venomous spider? This time, you're the one who brought this upon yourself, and you're going to die a miserable death. Don't blame others." Ping Zhang grinned and pointed at Chenhanzi. "Poison spider, this is your lunch. Go." Hiss. The thousand-faced venomous spider waved its 8 long legs and crawled towards Chenhanzi at an extremely fast speed. Chenhanzi's expression froze, and she hastily released her level 9 mystic beast, the Silver Wolf. When the Silver Wolf charged towards the thousand-faced venomous spider, Chenhanzi also swiftly dashed towards Ping Zhang. Substantial killing intent had already condensed in her eyes. Ping Zhang sneered and flung out his mystic spider silk. The instant he attracted Chenhanzi's attention, he swiftly took out something from his sleeve and lightly pinched it. Chapter 417. Arbor, who was sitting in his seat, abruptly stood up and stared at Ping Zhang with his sharp, cold eyes. "Hanzi, quickly admit defeat. Come down." Lu Yun also stood up and looked at her disciple with eyes full of anxiety. However, in the blink of an eye, the 8-legged venomous spider suddenly spat out a mouthful of venom with a hiss, and its sharp little venomous fangs abruptly bit at the Silver Wolf's paw. The Silver Wolf was very intelligent and naturally knew that this thousand-faced venomous spider's teeth were very formidable. However, just as it wanted to escape, it discovered that its paw was hooked by something. When it looked down, it discovered that it was a ball of spider web that had unwittingly entangled its paw. The thousand-faced venomous spider bit down on the Silver Wolf's white fur. The Silver Wolf immediately fell to the ground and rolled around in pain. On the other side, Chenhanzi discovered that an exotic fragrance had suddenly burrowed into her nose. Just as she cursed inwardly, she suddenly heard the Silver Wolf's wretched howl. She panicked, and when she was distracted again, Ping Zhang's mystic spider web was already slicing towards her neck. "Punk, you dare!" Lu Yun shouted, her eyes glaring so red that they were about to burst. When Xixia Valley's Valley Master saw that something was amiss, he immediately jumped up and shouted to stop, "Ghost Faction Disciple. You've won. Immediately release the Holy Water Sect's miss and quickly leave the stage. Split up. Split up." However, Xixia Valley's Valley Master's shout was useless. He couldn't stop Ping Zhang's deranged actions. Chenhanzi tilted her body at the moment of extreme danger, and her neck arched backwards to avoid that mystic spider web. Unfortunately, her head was dizzy and swollen, and her mobility was greatly affected. Her limbs felt like they were being restrained by something, so they were very slow and exhausted from head to toe. Although she managed to avoid Ping Zhang's fatal strike towards her neck after her movement slowed down, she couldn't avoid her shoulder anymore. However, that mystic spider web pierced into her shoulder. At this time, Chen Hanzi already couldn't feel the pain in her shoulder. She only felt that her body was very, very heavy, and her head was so heavy that she couldn't control it. Her body suddenly leaned back and fell heavily onto the stage with a bang. Senior Sister Chen. Junior Sister Hanzi. The senior and junior sisters of the Holy Water sect all stood up and shouted angrily. Xixia Valley's Valley Master decisively flew onto the stage and grabbed Ping Zhang's moving wrist. He coldly glanced at him before saying, "Ghost Faction disciple Ping Zhang wins." Humph. Ping Zhang was unwilling to accept this. He forcefully shook off the Valley Master's hand and jumped down from the arena. When he passed by Chowen, Ping Zhang's footsteps paused, and he whispered to Chowen, "Junior sister, how did I do?" Chowen revealed a pair of stern eyes from under the gray cloth scarf. She nodded with a smile and said, "Senior brother, you did well this time." On the other side, several senior sisters from the Holy Water sect had already run up the stage and carried Chen Hanzi and the Silver Wolf down. Black liquid flowed out of their wounds, especially the Silver Wolf, which had been severely injured by the thousand-faced venomous spider. Its fur was constantly festering and falling to the ground in handfuls. Both of them were on the verge of death. Ghost Faction, you're so despicable. You actually used this kind of despicable poison. Doya furiously stood up and pointed in the direction of the Ghost Faction as she cursed. Don't say despicable, little sister from the Holy Water sect. This is a competition. As long as you can defeat your opponent, it doesn't matter if you use poison or medicine. As long as you use the right method and defeat your opponent, you'll win. Chapter 4:18. Isn't my senior brother's words reasonable? A Ghost Faction disciple added with a sinister smile. Senior Sister Chen. Ming Xia supported Chen Hanzi's body and anxiously looked up at Lu Yun and the others. Master, what do we do now? Everyone, take a look and see if you have any antidote pills on you. Antidote pills are useless. The Silver Wolf was poisoned by the thousand-faced venomous spider, so a simple antidote pill can't cure this kind of poison. As for Hanzi, from the looks of it, that Ghost Faction disciple should have given her an extremely vicious medicine that can prevent her from gathering mystic energy. How is it? How is it? I have several antidote pills here. Do you want to try swallowing them first? Daybreak Sect Master's daughter, Liang Qingqing, quickly walked up and crouched next to Chen Hanzi as she asked with concern. Master said the antidote pills are useless. Ming Xia was about to cry from anxiety. Everyone move aside. Don't crowd around. A cold voice interrupted, instantly causing everyone who was at a loss for words to have a flash of inspiration. That's right. Didn't little junior sister once treat City Lord Wu's daughter in 5 Moon City? That's right, that's right. Back then, wasn't his daughter poisoned by that something heartbreak grass? Little junior sister cured the poison in a few strokes. Presumably, the poison in senior sister Chen's body this time. Xiao Mu had already impatiently shooed everyone away before they could start a lively discussion. Everyone else very sensibly moved aside for her, but they basically still surrounded Chen Hanzi. After Duan Yu, Situ Yi, Wei Nanfeng, and Bailey Shi squeezed into the crowd, they saw Mo Lian standing leisurely on the side with an empty space around her. Chen Hanzi was lying there, and Darling Qiao was squatting next to her. She first felt her pulse before turning over the dying Silver Wolf. She took out a small wooden box and took out a pill, stuffing it into the silver wolf's mouth. Afterwards, she focused on performing acupuncture on chimpanzee. As soon as she started, that inexplicably familiar feeling of performing acupuncture a million times welled up in her mind once again. That kind of medicinal powder which chimpanzee had inhaled was scattered all over her body, turning into small grains of powder, blocking the circulation of the profound energy in chimpanzee's body. Arbor's hand that was holding the needle was slightly stunned. Only then did he realize that he had unknowingly sent his profound sense into his eyes and could actually see the flow of profound energy in chimpanzee's body. This method of controlling the flow of mystic sense into one's eyes was one of the techniques recorded in the second layer of the Spirit Division record. She had been staying on the first level all this time, painstakingly cultivating how to use her own profound sense to control her avatar. She had only glanced at the second layer of the spirit chapter and hadn't really studied it. However, she hadn't expected that she would be able to master it in a moment of haste. Our dear Chiao Mu was a little excited in her heart. She hurriedly mobilized all the mystic energy in her branch meridians and gathered it all into mystic sense. Then, she guided it into her eyes and observed with rapt attention. More than half of the profound energy in one of chimpanzee's main profound veins was present. The reason why her profound energy had not filled her entire profound veins was because chimpanzee had exhausted quite a bit of her profound energy when she fought with Ghost Gates Pingzhang earlier and had yet to recover. This was really strange. It really allowed her to clearly see the condition of Senior Sister Chen's body. This would be beneficial for her treatment. Arbor was stunned for a moment before regaining his senses and removing the small grains of powder from chimpanzee's body. If she could always observe other people's profound veins in the future, then wouldn't it be equivalent to having an additional cheating device in a battle? If she opened her profound eyes in the middle of a battle, wouldn't she be able to clearly see how much profound energy was left in her opponent's body? Chapter 419. However, in less than 2 minutes, her mystic conscience quietly dissipated. Not only that, her little head also felt a slight prickling sensation. Presumably, it was because she had overused her mystic conscience. Arbor didn't dare to recklessly use her mystic conscience again. Thankfully, she was fast, and in that short amount of time, the small dust in chimpanzee's body was more or less cleaned up. Chimpanzee didn't inhale much to begin with, and in addition to her quick treatment, chimpanzee's face turned from ghastly pale to slightly rosy pink in no time. When everyone saw that chimpanzee's complexion had improved, they couldn't help but heave a long sigh of relief. Lu Yun's expression also looked better, and she asked softly, "Jojo, how's Hansi's condition?" "It's nothing serious." Arbor stuffed a detoxification pill into chimpanzee's mouth before standing up and saying, "Carry Senior Sister Hansi over there to rest. She can't use mystic energy for 2 days, so she needs to properly nurse her body." "Okay, little junior sister." "Jojo, what's wrong?" Mo Lien suddenly grabbed her little hand and worriedly reached out to touch her slightly pale little face. "Is it very strenuous to perform acupuncture?" "I can help you." "I'm fine." Arbor hastily interrupted him and squeezed his hand hard, indicating for him to shut up. She knew what he wanted to say. He wanted to use medicine to help treat Senior Sister Chen. Did he think that she didn't know that there were side effects when superhumans used medicine? If the medicine was overused, it could even lead to a severe coma or something. How scary was that? It didn't take much effort for her to treat Senior Sister Chen and the Silver Wolf. Her complexion was only pale because she wanted to take a look at Senior Sister Chen's condition out of curiosity, which led to her overuse of her mystic conscience. She could recover to her original state with a little rest. It was best not to expose the Crown Prince's identity as an apothecary in front of others if possible to avoid trouble. Mo Lien's eyes curved slightly, and she chuckled softly and nodded. "Okay, I'll listen to you. What were these two talking about again?" They couldn't understand. Everyone expressed their puzzlement with stifled hearts. Little junior sister actually knows how to perform acupuncture. His medical skills seem to be pretty good. The person who spoke was Mu Liangde. It was unknown when he had approached the group, but at this moment, he was looking at Arbor with great interest, and a burst of laughter came from his mouth. Don't you know that little junior sister wants to scold you the moment she catches you? Go further away. Everyone looked at him in disdain, but Mu Liangde was thick-skinned and didn't care at all. He continued to stand beside everyone and look at Arbor with a smile. Arbor didn't have time to care about her. She was trying to save senior sister Chen's silver wolf. The silver wolf's injuries were even more severe than senior sister Chen's. Its wounds had completely festered. The thousand-faced venomous spider's venom was very strong and corrosive. Some of the flesh around the wound was even necrotic. Arbor was using a small dagger to cut off the necrotic parts of the silver wolf. He quickly cleaned the wound, took out a pack of powder, sprinkled it on the cloth, and then firmly covered the silver wolf's wound. Soon, the silver wolf's wound from the venomous spider's stab stopped festering, and the bleeding also stopped immediately. At this time, Chenhanzi had already faintly regained consciousness and was calling out softly, "Silver wolf, silver wolf." The senior sisters from the Holy Water sect immediately rushed to her side and bent down to whisper to her, "Don't worry, junior sister Chin. The silver wolf is fine. Little junior sister saved it." Only then did Chenhanzi let out a sigh of relief. Her vision darkened, and she quickly fainted again. Chapter 420. Ping Zhang sat in the Ghost Faction's seating area and watched the Holy Water sect's people busily treating the silver wolf from afar. A disdainful and callous smile spread across his face. A waste of effort. If the mystic abandoning powder he gave Chenhanzi could still be cured. The silver wolf's bite from the thousand-faced venomous spider simply couldn't be treated. Those foolish women from the Holy Water sect still wanted to vainly save the silver wolf's life. He was very familiar with the thousand-faced venomous spider's poison. His thousand-faced venomous spider had just advanced to level 10 not long ago, so it was simply a piece of cake for it to bite a level 9 mystic beast to death. With the silver wolf dead, Chenhanzi, a mystic cultivator who had lost her mystic beast, naturally had her strength greatly reduced. Putting aside the fact that she couldn't contract with other mystic beasts in the future, at least her mental state definitely wouldn't be able to overcome this hurdle, and her life would come to an end. Ha ha ha. Ping Zhang straightened his back and sent a look to junior sister Choan beside him. "Watch carefully, junior sister. Senior brother will vent your anger for you, starting with this female disciple." Choan smiled without batting an eyelid. However, her face that was buried under the gray headscarf soon scrunched up. From her position, she just happened to be able to see the youth Mo Lian standing on the side, attentively watching a little girl who was squatting on the ground performing treatment. The youth's gaze didn't shift away from the little girl from beginning to end. This made her heart feel like it was being gnawed by thousands of ants. Not only was it riddled with holes, but it was also abnormally painful. "You will regret it." Choan tugged at the corner of her mouth, revealing a cruel sneer. Ping Zhang didn't understand the situation, so he lifted his robe and crossed his legs, calmly waiting for the Holy Water sect's people to start wailing. However, after a long while, after 2 consecutive matches, there wasn't any movement from the Holy Water sect's side. Instead, they all returned to their seats in their respective positions. Ping Zhang was slightly taken aback, and he looked in the direction of the Holy Water sect with a frown. He turned his head and said to a junior brother beside him, "Go over and inquire about what's going on with the Holy Water sect." The junior disciple from the Ghost faction didn't dare to go over. He felt that he might be asking for a beating if he went over. Those girls from the Holy Water sect didn't look like they were to be trifled with. He hesitated for a moment, yet he had no choice in the end. Under the threatening gaze of senior brother Ping Zhang, he could only stand up angrily and walk over dejectedly. Their ghost sect was like this. The higher-ups bullied the lower-ups, and the elders bullied the ordinary disciples. This was a common thing. Everyone relied on their own abilities to fight for the upper echelons. Those at the bottom basically had no way out. Especially junior brothers like them who had just entered the sect. In the eyes of those senior brothers who had grown up, they were just servants who could be ordered around. They had no status in the sect at all. The young disciple's heart trembled as he braced himself and walked up to a senior sister from the Holy Water sect. He used a voice that was only loud enough for him to hear and timidly asked, "May I ask this senior sister, how is the senior sister that you guys carried down just now? Who are you calling senior sister?" That female disciple suddenly stood up and raised her hand to slap this ghost faction disciple heavily on the face. "Scram! You bunch of little bastards from Hellgate, don't come and argue with us. Who knows you?" The junior disciple from Ghost Faction was about to cry. He covered one side of his face and turned to look at senior brother Ping Zhang, who was sitting in his own seat. He saw that half of his face was gloomy, and his expression was a bit frightening. Senior sister, I also didn't want to come over." The junior disciple covered his face and retreated a step. Chapter 421. He was so timid that he practically didn't dare to look at the expressions of the surrounding Holy Water sect disciples. These Holy Water sect women all had extremely unsightly expressions, as if they would immediately pounce on him and tear him apart. He just knew that this was an arduous task. Senior brother Ping Zhang had sent him here purely to find trouble. "Humph, go back and tell him that if he wants to know about our senior sister Chen's situation, then tell him to come over himself. But let's see if he dares or not." That senior sister raised her eyebrows and looked at the Ghost Faction disciple provocatively. Another Holy Water sect disciple beside her started laughing. This kind of cowardly tortoise only knows how to use some despicable methods on the stage. He doesn't even dare to run over to our territory to behave atrociously, so don't even think about it. The Ghost Faction disciple cast a pleading look at Ping Zhang, but the latter glared at him in dissatisfaction with a taut face. The Ghost Faction disciple dejectedly returned to his seat and secretly said to Ping Zhang, "Senior brother, the Holy Water sect wants you to personally go over and ask. Are they worthy?" Ping Zhang sneered and rubbed his thumbs. "In order to hide our abilities before the competition, we instead caused junior sister to suffer grievances. Now, we don't need to anymore. These Holy Water sect girls will soon know that our Ghost Faction isn't so easy to provoke." Ping Zhang gazed darkly at Qiao Mu. Qiao Mu keenly sensed his gaze and turned her head to look at him. Her pair of eyes that were as tranquil as an ancient well contained a 10,000-year-old chill, causing Ping Zhang to inexplicably shudder. Chen Hanzi's injury was simply a fuse. Following that, whenever the Holy Water sect disciples encountered members of the Ghost Faction, they would be extremely ruthless in their attacks. Both sides had injuries of varying severity. Overall, it was still the Holy Water sect that had the upper hand. As long as the Holy Water sect disciples were wary of the Ghost Faction's poisoning methods and seized the initiative, they would absolutely suppress the Ghost Faction with their orthodox cultivation techniques. After several rounds, the Ghost Faction disciples were all suppressed by the Holy Water sect girls and carried off the stage with heavy injuries. Ghost Cert's expression was very unsightly. At this time, Ning Bihuan defeated a Ghost Faction disciple with her silver spear and even heavily injured him. The Ghost Faction's elder Gue Buddha finally couldn't help but curse, "Eldest Miss Ning, you're too heavy-handed." It was fine if the Holy Water sect's people had accumulated grievances with the Ghost Faction, but even the Omni Faction's Ning Bihuan, one of the 5 factions, treated the Ghost Faction's people like this. Elder Ghost didn't know what to say. His old face was solemn and taut. When he looked at Ning Bihuan, there seemed to be a raging fire burning in his eyes. However, Ning Bihuan didn't care. She raised her hand to stop Elder Ghost's words. Since we agreed on a competition, then everyone should bring out their true abilities to fight. Everyone should rely on their own abilities. If you're afraid, you can just go on stage and admit defeat. I don't care. Once he finished speaking, he shrugged in an infuriating manner, as if he looked down on Elder Ghost. Ghost Surf was angered half to death by this clumsy Ning Bihuan. He glared angrily at Peng Zhang and the others. Why haven't you carried your junior brother down yet? How shameful. He didn't pick a good day. After these few matches, more than half of their Hellgate disciples were seriously injured. How unlucky was this? Right now, he was a bit vexed about Peng Zhang's previous willfulness. If it weren't for him starting this conflict, how could things have developed to such an unmanageable state? Chapter 422. In the afternoon, the scorching sun had already risen to its highest point, and the entire area around the stage was filled with a fiery atmosphere. This match was between a Coitus faction female disciple and a Daybreak sect male disciple. The Coitus faction female disciple threw herself into the male disciple's arms as soon as she came up, startling him into retreating repeatedly. That female disciple was still muttering, "Little big brother, don't hurt me," when the Daybreak sect disciple suddenly rushed in front of her and smashed her to the ground with a slap. The entire area was silent for a moment before bursting into cheers. Arbor speechlessly looked above the stage. The Daybreak sect disciple seemed to have been provoked, and his entire body was like a little calf as he exerted a burst of brute force. He grabbed the Coitus faction female disciple's hair with one hand and even slapped her with his other hand. In the beginning, the Coitus sect disciple was still crying out softly, "Ayu, oh, oh." Then, he was beaten until his true colors were revealed. Flustered and exasperated, he roared, "You little bastard, stop. This old lady's hair. This old lady's face. You freaking stop right there. Everyone, come out." The Coitus faction female disciple summoned her mystic beast. She was about to go mad from anger. Her makeup, her image, her beautiful clothes, and her headdress. They were all completely ruined by this barbarian in front of her. So angry, so angry, so angry. The Coitus faction female disciple's first sentence after summoning her mystic beast was to directly order her mystic beast to eat the bull-like youth in front of her. The Daybreak sect disciple also summoned his mystic beast. Everyone couldn't help but be amused when they saw this. It really was a bull-like creature. This bull-like creature was very large, and when it stood on the stage, the two people were directly squeezed to the edge of the stage. The fat rabbit summoned by the Coitus faction disciple was simply comical and laughable in front of the bull-like creature. Therefore, everyone soon saw that the Coitus faction female disciple and her fat rabbit were completely crushed by the Daybreak sect disciple and the mystic beast bull-like creature. The fat rabbit was being trampled under the bull-like creature's hooves, and it truly looked somewhat pitiful. The Coitus faction female disciple was no longer as coquettish and flirtatious as when she first went up on stage. At this time, she was beaten into a sorry state. Her face was ashen, and her eyes were spitting fire as she angrily said, "Wait. I admit defeat." The one-sided beating finally came to an end. The female disciple of Coitus sect cried miserably, and was fiercely glared at by Granny Witch. "Useless thing, you still have the face to cry." "Master." Tears streamed down the woman's face. She felt wronged. How could she have known that the barbarian bull would completely ignore her charm technique? Did he think that she liked to throw herself at him? That was one of the basic cultivation techniques of the Coitus faction. Unfortunately, before she could fully display her charm technique, she was viciously beaten by that little brat barbarian bull. It was too infuriating. Go back and train hard. Granny Witch's cold words caused this Coitus sect disciple to involuntarily tremble all over. Shishia Valley's Valley Master couldn't help but sigh in relief when he saw that this beating had finally ended. He continued to call out numbers with a smile on his face. Number 82, Holy Water Sect Disciple Arbor accepts the challenge. Shishia Valley's Valley Master was abruptly startled. Under everyone's puzzled gazes, he continued to recite, Ghost Faction Disciple Cho, and the audience was in an uproar. Everyone was too familiar with number 82. Wasn't this the number that the Holy Water Sect's young lady changed to? Shouldn't her opponent be that Daybreak Sect disciple Mu Liangde? Why did she change again? Chapter 423. Shishia Valley's Valley Master was stupefied halfway through his recitation. That day, he had personally witnessed the little girl brazenly switching numbers with someone else in order to directly challenge a Daybreak Sect disciple named Mu Liangde on the stage. But what was happening now? Duan Yu coldly glared at Mu Liangde. However, Mu Liangde merely pretended not to know why everyone was making a racket and maintained a chuckle. Mu Liangde, you weren't number 82 from the start, right? Duan Yu coldly questioned. Everyone from Daybreak Sect looked at Mu Liangde himself in bewilderment. The sect master's daughter, Liang Qingqing, also frowned. Mu Liangde, is what senior brother Duan Yu said true? The number you reported at the start was that of Choan from the Ghost Faction. Junior sister Qingqing, I'm also not sure about this matter. Mu Liangde continued to smile and feign ignorance. He wouldn't honestly admit that Choan had already come to him to talk about this before the small banquet. The two of them discussed and both felt that since the little girl mentioned it before, she would definitely tamper with the number drawing and change it to Mu Liangde's opponent no matter what. Choan wanted to give that little bitch a surprise, so she secretly instructed Mu Liangde that she would give him a number hint during the drawing. If the little girl really came to ask him, he would report Choan's number to the little girl. Mu Liangde naturally approved with both hands raised. Since he was bound to have a battle with that little girl, he was quite happy for someone to challenge the little girl before him so that he could figure out her ins and outs. After all, he was still a bit flustered by the meaningful gazes that several people around him were giving him. If the little girl didn't have something outstanding about her, why were they all staring at him with those strange gazes? Choan truly hit it off with Mu Liangde when she came to find him and conspired against the little girl. Both of them obtained their own desires and achieved their goals. Xiao Mu was originally exceptionally intelligent, so she naturally understood what Duan Yu could figure out after thinking about it for a bit. Pretty good. Jackals of the same lair even learned to scheme against the little girl. She would let them know that in the face of strength, all schemes and tricks were nothing. Arbor stood up from his seat, and Mo Lien coldly looked at the Daybreak Sect disciple, Mu Liangde, who was secretly pleased with himself. There was still a refined and courteous smile on Mu Liangde's lips, but when his gaze met the Crown Prince's extremely cold and oppressive gaze, he couldn't help but quickly avert his gaze as his body inexplicably trembled slightly. Mu Liangde. When the little girl walked to the front of the stage, she suddenly turned around, and her eyes shot toward Daybreak Sect's seating area like lightning. She coldly said, "Since you want to see my strength first, then I'll let you see it. I hope you have the courage to accept my challenge in the next match. Don't be a coward." Ugly. Everyone was speechless. Mu Liangde's expression immediately turned extremely ugly, as though it had been painted green. Why was he a coward? Even his own sect's disciples were looking at him with disdain. What was going on? Duan Yu sneered, "Mu Liangde, you're a Daybreak Sect disciple. You should be very clear about the situation of the 3 sects and 5 factions. It won't do you any good to be too close to people from the ghost faction. You understand. When Mu Liangde saw the gazes his senior and junior brothers and sisters cast over, he felt so stifled that he almost couldn't take it anymore. He and Choan were merely taking what they each needed, so why did it sound like he had betrayed the sect and colluded with the ghost faction in Duan Yu's mouth? Chapter 424. Everyone, please don't misunderstand. Mu Liangde hastily said, Senior brother Duan Yu, I really didn't get close to the ghost faction. Duan Yu waved his hand, not wanting to speak with him anymore. Liang Qingqing also glanced at him disappointedly. Senior brother Mu, it's wrong of you to associate yourself with the ghost faction. Mu Liangde opened his mouth, but he was suppressing a surge of anger in his heart. He sat there sullenly as his gaze drifted towards the stage. He saw the little girl steadily walking up the stairs onto the stage. A snow leopard with white fur landed at her feet with a whoosh. Choan leaped onto the stage with a very lithe posture. It was impossible to tell that she had her hand chopped off a few days ago and was on the brink of death. Choan's gaze landed smugly on Arbor's face. What? Very surprised, right? Her voice was very hoarse, as if it had been whipped by countless vines. It was terrifyingly coarse. I'm not surprised. I just didn't expect that someone would be so stupid as to rush to court death, Arbor said dryly as he shook his head, bitch. Choan shouted roughly, her eyes glaring with a venomous glint. Have you heard of a saying? A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. Choan's right hand poked out from her sleeve, and everyone involuntarily sucked in a cold breath when they saw it. This person's right arm didn't look like a human hand at all. It was more like a piece of withered wood, and her 5 fingers and fingernails were twisted like long withered vines. Demonic cultivator. Someone suddenly shouted. Little junior sister, be careful. This person fused with the power of a demonic plant. Ha 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 ha. Choan looked up to the sky and laughed smugly. She flipped open her gray headscarf, revealing a face so fair that it was somewhat strange. Is my face beautiful? She used that hand that was twisted like a withered vine to gently caress her fair and smooth face. Is it beautiful? How should he put it? That face was quite beautiful when taken apart, but when put together, it made people feel very awkward. It was like a fake face, with a stroke here and a piece there. When put together, there was no sense of harmony at all. Arbor shook his head. Ugly. Choan's face stiffened, and she said angrily, what do you know? My previous face was 10,000 times more beautiful than this. It's all because of you, because of you. She approached Arbor step by step, pointed at one of her eyes, and asked with a coarse smile, can you tell that this is a fake eye? Arbor nodded. Don't be so angry. Your eyeballs might fall out. Everyone was speechless. Why was the style so strange? Ah! Choan shouted. She was simply about to go mad with anger. She originally wanted to scare the little slut, but who knew that the stoic face was expressionless from beginning to end? Shouldn't a normal girl at least be a little shocked when they saw her fake eyes? Do you know who I am? Arbor shook his head. I don't know you. You don't know me, aha. You don't know me, ha 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 ha. Choan felt that her words were extremely sarcastic. Her enemy didn't know her at all, but she was in so much pain because of this enemy in front of her day and night. How laughable was this? Choan's one eye was tearing up from laughing. Do you still remember Nian Kuei who went to Shizhou City to kill you? I am his master. The master of that pitiful worm who self-destructed after you crushed his soul. Chapter 425. She didn't reveal a shocked expression like the others, nor did she point at Choan and shout, "So it's you." The little fellow only tilted her head and thought for a moment before nodding and uttering an "oh." Everyone. Why did they feel like they would be angered to death if they conversed with the little girl? You finally revealed your background with surging passion and deep hatred, right? It was supposed to be very exciting and should have been a gasp of surprise. However, the other party merely threw an "oh" at you indifferently, like a basin of cold water drenching you from head to toe. All of your excited emotions abruptly disappeared. Choan trembled in anger. "You don't remember Nyenkue? I feel that whether I remember one of your subordinates or not doesn't have much to do with our current battle." Arbor patted the snow leopard's head indifferently. "After saying so much, can we get to the point?" She felt that these people were very boring. Everyone liked to talk a lot of nonsense when they came up. With so much time to talk, the battle could have already ended. Choan looked at Arbor gloomily. "You're not a level 10 mystic cultivator yet. Don't you think it's too fake to borrow someone else's mystic beast to fight? Can it be as fake as your face? You bitch." These words simply pierced her girlish heart full of holes, making her feel like she was in hell, unable to see the light again. Arbor knitted his brows and pointed at Choan, "Go tear her mouth. It's so dirty." The snow leopard abruptly charged forward. Choan stretched out her 5 claws, and her withered vine-like arm swept toward the snow leopard's head with a whoosh. She shouted sternly, "You're breaking the rules too much. This snow leopard isn't yours at all. You can't let it participate in the battle. If it's not mine, then is it yours? Why don't you make it listen to you?" Arbor coldly followed up. "Ah! Come out." Choan's eyes shot out a cold and vicious glint. With a furious shout, a very long centipede suddenly burrowed out from her side. The most disgusting thing was that there was actually an ugly human face on the centipede's head. As it crawled, that face kept faintly facing you, and several hundred pairs of slender legs densely stretched out. Xiao Mu jumped back a step. Although her small face was expressionless, her entire body was bristling. Fortunately, the snow leopard took a step forward and stood in front of her, slapping the human-faced centipede. The little fellow stomped on the ground and charged towards Choan. With the ferrule in his hand, the profound energy in his entire body surged. He was already in a state of violent rage. So, a line of fire shot out from the ferrule, directly breaking through the solid stone tiles of the arena, scraping out a shallow gully, and surging towards Choan's feet. Choan did not panic. She swung out her vine-like arm and smashed it into the incoming line of fire. A slender figure had already arrived in front of Choan. Without saying a word, a ferrule struck towards Choan's abdomen. Choan's pupils constricted. She hurriedly released her vines and wrapped them around her abdomen. Bang! Unexpectedly, the little guy changed his move very quickly and punched Choan's forehead. This punch carried a strong gust of wind as it smashed into her forehead, causing Choan to retreat several steps. Mu Liangde was watching from below, and his eyes had already revealed a grave expression. As expected, this little girl was very formidable. Her combat strength seemed to be incomparable to a level 8 mystic cultivator's cultivation. Compared to level 8 mystic cultivators of the same level, she was much stronger in terms of speed and explosive power. 10 o'clock ends, see you tomorrow. Chapter 426. Crack, the sound of her forehead cracking entered Choan's ears, causing her hair to stand on end. Bitch, bitch. Ah, Choan trembled as she reached out to touch her forehead. She felt as if something had ruptured under her skin. Back then, she was implicated by Nyenkue's self-detonation. Although she used a level 4 defensive mystic weapon at the critical moment and barely managed to save her life, she lost one eye. All the skin on her body shattered and even festered due to the explosion. Her father rushed her to the ghost sect and begged ghost physician Luigi to treat her. She was mended piece by Luigi. Her face was unnatural and uncoordinated compared to other people's normal faces. She knew better than anyone else. More than anyone else, she wanted to regain her face that originally belonged to her. But was it possible? Impossible. Because of this woman in front of her, she had already lost her face forever. But now, this woman was so cruel that she even wanted to destroy her fake face. Choan was that commandery Princess Hui, and who was doted on by everyone back then. At this moment, she was staring at the little girl standing in front of her with a sinister eye. If she hadn't coincidentally bumped into her in Shixia Valley this time, she still wouldn't have known who the commoner village girl from Shizhou City that the crown prince had been protecting so well was. After her accident back then, her father felt that something was amiss. Nian Kuei couldn't have self-detonated for no reason, so perhaps someone was scheming against her behind the scenes. Her father quickly sent people out of the capital to Shizhou City to investigate the whole story. However, not long after, her father secretly came to tell her that the people he sent out were all intercepted and killed by His Highness the Crown Prince. In the future, they probably couldn't send people to Shizhou City to investigate anything. Otherwise, they would definitely infuriate the Crown Prince and cause unnecessary trouble. His Highness the Crown Prince was warning them not to touch that person in Shizhou City again. Ha ha. Commandery Princess Hui and was laughing so hard that she nearly choked. Suddenly, a piece of dead wood shot out from under her perfectly fine chest lapel and struck Arbor's head. Arbor had been paying attention to this mentally unstable woman. When she was laughing and crying, Arbor was already on guard against her. As a result, this piece of dead wood that suddenly drilled out from under her chest didn't hurt Arbor at all. Instead, it was broken by her with a backhand slap of her ferrule. I didn't expect that my commandery Princess Hui and of the vassal king of an Nan's estate would have such a day. Hui then turned her head and looked deeply at Mo Lien. Your Highness, do you regret it? Mo Lien's slender brows were completely furrowed. However, Duan Yu suddenly jumped up from his seat and shouted, "See! I told you that it was your love debt that had implicated our Jojo." Mo Lien turned to glare fiercely at Duan Yu, feeling extremely impatient with this commandery Princess Hui Hen. Back then, if the vassal king of an Nan hadn't sensed his intentions and immediately sent Hui An out of the capital to become a disciple of the ghost sect, how could he have let this babbling woman off? What an inexplicable woman. She should have known when she started talking to herself and making a move on his Chow. Karma was a circle. What was wrong with his darling taking revenge on her? Could it be that she was the only one allowed to kill people as she pleased and others weren't allowed to retaliate? Who was she pretending to be the victim for? Chapter 427. Arbor furrowed his brows. For some reason, he felt uncomfortable in his heart when he saw that masquerade woman looking at Mo Lien with a mournful expression. You're not allowed to look at me and act pitiful. You're not allowed to act. Arbor tilted his head and suddenly shot up, sending waves of mystic energy toward commandery Princess Hui and below him. The current commandery Princess Hui An already struck fear into everyone's hearts. Strips of dead wood actually burrowed out of her body and wriggled as if they were alive. That scene was truly too beautiful, and people could not bear to look at it directly. Master, what's going on? Are demonic cultivators such terrifying existences? Doya covered her mouth with both hands, a trace of horror on her face. Lu Yun shook her head and said, no, she shouldn't be a pure demonic cultivator. This ghost faction disciple was originally a mystic cultivator. Some people in this world can't open their mystic meridians and become a mystic cultivator, so they don't hesitate to use crooked methods to merge their bodies with evil beasts and plants to pursue the realm of a demonic cultivator. This ghost faction disciple is already a level 10 mystic cultivator, so she shouldn't be pursuing a demonic cultivator, right? Lu Yun was perplexed after much thought. Young Shirong also nodded repeatedly on the side. Murong Sun looked at Commandery Princess Hui and on the stage. At this moment, the area below her neck was completely enveloped by intertwined dead wood. It was as if she was wrapped in a cocoon made of dead wood. Other than her head being intact, every other part of her body could no longer be called a human's. Xiao Mu looked down at the puppet inside the withered wooden cocoon from above. Suddenly, she recalled the ferrule in her hand into her conscious and replaced it with a normal bow and arrow. Ha 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 ha. The deadwood cocoon crazily wriggled its body, and its head strangely tilted toward the sky. When it looked at Arbor, a vicious glint flowed through its single eye. Several hundred deadwood shaved out of the cocoon and simultaneously whipped toward Arbor in midair. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Arbor pulled back his bowstring, constantly changing his position in the air, and with astonishing speed, he kept shooting arrows at the cocoon. The deadwood cocoon went berserk, and the thousands upon thousands of deadwood roots twisted and lashed at Xiao Mu. Floating flash. Arbor's figure instantly disappeared from the spot where he was wrapped in the deadwood. When he reappeared, he was already standing behind the deadwood cocoon. He was still continuously shooting arrows at the deadwood cocoon. He was continuously drawing out a large number of arrows from the purple storage talisman. Everyone had already lost count of how many arrows this little girl had shot. Only Mo Lien, Duan Yu, Bailey Shi, the three peak masters, and the sect masters saw it very clearly and calculated it very accurately. 286, 287, 288 arrows. The little girl stopped and held the bow and arrow in midair. She looked coldly at the inhuman thing that kept going crazy and whipping the arena with a withered branch. Ah! Ah! Commandery Princess Hui and had completely sunk into insanity. At this time, the little girl suddenly spoke. The human body has 409 acupuncture points. Among them, the 108 acupoints were more important. Now that you're in this ghastly state, I can't even see the acupuncture points below your neck clearly. So, just in case, I shot 288 arrows at you. That's about all the acupuncture points, right? The little girl muttered to herself. Your arrows are useless against me. Commandery Princess Hui and roared angrily. Chapter 428. You'll know very soon whether it's useful or not. Arbor coldly gazed at her. For some reason, Mu Liangda's eyelids twitched inexplicably when he heard the little girl's words. Arbor pulled back his bowstring and aimed at the withered tree cocoon. Explosive arrow. Whoosh! That arrowhead rapidly shot toward Commandery Princess Hui and at lightning speed. Hui then was enraged, and she abruptly swung the writhing withered tree at the arrowhead. She harshly shouted, "Whimsical bitch! Do you think that a few incomparably ordinary lousy arrows can penetrate my impenetrable body? Ha 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 ha! This is the body of a level 10 mystic cultivator and a demonic cultivator, ha ha ha!" Bang! A clear and crisp sound of an explosion rang out from beneath her body. This explosion seemed to have triggered a song of explosion, and explosions of various sizes immediately resounded in Commandery Princess Hui An's body, which was like a cocoon made out of dead wood. Bang bang, bang bang bang. Crack crack. The explosive arrows directly tore open holes in the withered tree cocoon, and streaks of strange red blood flowed out. Oh, so it can bleed. Arbor nodded in realization and retreated slightly. He stood at the edge of the stage and coolly gazed at Commandery Princess Hui-en, who was continuously exploding. The surroundings were already dead silent, but the scene before them was truly a bit horrifying. Commandery Princess Hui-en's transformation into a withered tree cocoon was already shocking enough. But now, they were directly watching a withered tree cocoon explode inch by inch in front of them. The flesh and internal organs inside all flipped out and fell to the ground piece by piece in a sea of red and white. It was quite visually stunning. Every explosive arrow would explode after hitting the target, but Arbor controlled his previous 288 arrows so that they did not explode. It wasn't until the last arrow that triggered the universe that Commandery Princess Hui-en enjoyed. At the same time, it was the refreshing feeling of having such a large number of explosive arrows explode in her body. The scene was truly too beautiful. No one dared to keep staring. After a while, they could not resist looking away and shaking their heads repeatedly. The expressions of the ghoul's sect disciples became abnormally ugly. Peng Zhang was even more heartbroken. He wanted to charge into the arena like a madman. Junior sister. Junior sister. He did not expect his junior sister to do such a crazy thing in the competition. It was all because of this little witch in front of him. It was all because of her. Senior apprentice brother Peng Zhang, senior apprentice brother Peng Zhang, you can't go. A few ghost faction disciples held him down, and secretly raised their eyes to look at Elder Ghost, who had an ugly expression on his face. When Lu Yizhi was supported by his retainer, Qiu San, he stared coldly at the stage and shook his head in disappointment. Truly a useless thing. Even after swallowing the evil body pill, it was still useless. He couldn't even beat a 12 or 13-year-old girl. Qiu San's eyes were filled with fear. Sir, you're right. Look at that lady from the Chow family. Her methods are so cruel and vile. She's not an easy person to deal with. Lu Yizhi's eyes turned cold. I think it's because Hui-en is too weak. Such a waste of my precious evil body, Dan. What a pity. Lu Yizhi shook his head. If he had known that she was so weak, he would not have given it to her. He had found all kinds of medicinal ingredients and spent at least 2 years to refine this pill that was infused with the blood essence of the evil plant. What a pity, what a pity. Chapter 429. Sir, should I help you back? Qiu San asked quietly as he supported Lu Yizhi. Since that woman called Hui-en was clearly a useless pawn, there was no need for them to continue watching. However, Lu Yizhi's eyes were still fixated on Arbor on the stage. He coughed a few times in a low voice, conjecture and confusion in his eyes. I really didn't expect that a small continent like Sikong planet in the lower star domain would have such a brilliant mystic technique. Lu Yizhi muttered to himself as he stared at the two people on the stage with a hint of hesitation in his eyes. This is nothing. In our Shuntian prefecture, there are probably plenty of low-level and mid-level mystic techniques like this, Qiu San said disdainfully. Low-level and mid-level mystic technique. Lu Yizhi sneered. Qiu San, you've been by my side for so long, but your eyesight is getting worse. Qiu San was taken aback. How brilliant can this mystic technique executed with a normal bow and arrow be? Using a normal bow and arrow to destroy the amalgamation of a level 10 mystic cultivator and a demonic cultivator is the terrifying part of this mystic technique. Lu Yizhi knew better than anyone that Hui-en's current body was completely wrapped in that withered tree cocoon. Other than the area above her neck, there were originally no openings. Qiu San, in the eyes of the Chow family's little miss, that amalgamation of demonic plants that we thought was flawless is actually full of openings. Lu Yizhi lamented. Otherwise, how could she have hit Hui-en's vitals with every arrow? How could Hui and survive after detonating these explosive arrows? At this time, Commandery Princess Hui and had already stepped onto the path of self-destruction. She lowered her head in horror and saw that her cocoon-like body was currently exploding inch by inch. The ground was already covered in a thick layer of withered vines and broken wood. After the outer layer of cocoon peeled off, the body inside was truly riddled with holes and was extremely horrifying. Xixia Valley's Valley Master braced himself and jumped onto the stage that was in a complete mess. He first speechlessly glanced at Arbor, who was standing at the edge of the stage, before sighing. He walked to Arbor's side and turned to the people below the stage to announce, "Holy Water Sect's disciple, Arbor, wins this match." He turned around and glanced at the badly mutilated thing on the ground and shook his head. He thought to himself that this female disciple of the Ghost faction was probably not going to survive. After everyone heard Xixia Valley's Valley Master's announcement, they were dazed for a good few seconds. Then, as if they had regained their wits, the entire place erupted into a clamor. Mixed in were the angry roars of the Ghost faction disciples and the cheers of the Holy Water Sect disciples, so it was truly very chaotic. Arbor jumped down from the arena expressionlessly and walked straight in the direction of his own sect, ignoring the glares of the Hellgate disciples along the way. No one knew that under that stoic face of hers, there were also some small fluctuations in her mood. She had learned this explosive arrow technique from the Spirit Division Records Technique chapter. To be honest, she still hadn't figured out what level of mystic technique the Spirit Division record was, but from the looks of it now that it really didn't seem that simple. Ever since it revealed its true form and flew into her consciousness on its own, she felt that this lousy book wasn't as simple as it seemed. Now that she looked at it, it was even more not simple. Any random minor technique in the technique chapter could explode Hui and supposedly powerful fusion body. Xiaomu suddenly paused in her footsteps and turned her head slightly to the side. Chapter 430. Right in front of her, Ping Zhang was being pressed down by several Ghost faction disciples. His face was brimming with fury, and his eyes were bloodshot as he glared at her. If it weren't for the Ghost faction disciples holding him back, Ping Zhang would have already rushed over and probably wanted to beat her up. What a baffling person. His heart ached for his junior sister. Could it be that Arbor deserved to stand on the stage as a live target for his junior sister to slap? Victory or defeat depended on one's ability, so what was there to be unconvinced about? What he hated the most was this kind of person who pestered endlessly after losing. Arbor glanced at Ping Zhang before disdainfully withdrawing her gaze. She walked past the Ghost faction members and briskly ran back to her sect. Suddenly, she heard everyone's gasps. The Holy Water Sect's senior sisters who were originally smiling at her from afar abruptly changed their expressions, and they cried out involuntarily, "Little junior sister, be careful." A gust of wind came from the back of Arbor's head, and an icy chill immediately hung on her stoic face. It turned out that Hui An was struggling with her broken body as she rushed down the stage. She snatched a sword from a Ghost faction disciple's hand and threw it at her back with a vicious glint in her eyes. As expected, she was a sore loser. Since she dared to sneak attack her, she would die without a burial place. Just as she was about to turn around, an extremely fast, moon-white figure landed beside her with a whoosh. The figure harshly pulled her into his embrace with his left hand, and at the same time, he raised his right hand and spread open his fingers, throwing out a leaping ball of purple flames. After the flames swept past the flying sword, that pitiful sword turned into ashes before everyone's eyes and disappeared inch by inch. Hui An covered her fake face that had long deformed in fright. Because of her violent movements, one of her eyeballs really did fall out of its socket. The instant she covered her face with her hand, her entire body was already enveloped by a ball of purple flames. The little fellow blinked and laid in Mo Lian's embrace. A comforting, extremely faint, and relaxed aura tightly enveloped her. Everyone present simultaneously widened their eyes, and their expressions changed as they looked at the ghost faction female disciple who was struggling and screaming while being enveloped by the purple flames. Outside the arena, Luigi's expression also changed for the first time as he stared in horror at the youth in white who had thrown out the purple flames. His retainer, Chio-san, also sucked in a breath of cold air. "Sir, where did this youth come from? How could this be?" Huoling. Luigi shook his head and muttered to himself, "Impossible. How could one comprehend the 5 spirit origins in this kind of place? Could it be?" Chio-san leaned close to Luigi and pointed upwards. "Like us, which mannerhead sent them over?" "Impossible." Luigi shook his head in absolute denial. "If someone from the 6 prefectures came, there's no way we wouldn't have heard of it." "That's true." Chio-san also felt puzzled and nodded. Then could it be that this youth really comprehended the 5 spirits' origin powers on Seikong planet? Luigi shook his head repeatedly. The fire spirit origin he comprehended is too powerful. I've never seen it even in Shuntian Prefecture. Impossible, impossible, impossible. This simply didn't conform to the rules and regulations. Regardless of how conflicted Luigi and his retainer, Chio-san, were in disbelief, the raging purple flames had already enveloped Commandery Princess Hui An's entire body. The little fellow turned around and coolly looked at Commandery Princess Hui An, who was howling miserably as she was roasted by the flames. Chapter 431. Sir. Do you think that youth was sent down by one of the aristocratic families from the 6 prefectures to gain experience? Chio-san still didn't believe that someone could comprehend the fire spirit's origin at such a young age in this insignificant Seikong planet in the lower star domain. If that was true, then what kind of frightening talent was that? Luigi didn't say anything else and silently stared at the stage for a while before turning around and quietly leaving with his attendant Chio-san. He could only rejoice that he had only given a demonic body pill and not a level 12 mystic breakthrough pill. Otherwise, his losses would have been even greater. Hui An wasn't of great use. At this time, Hui An's eyes were filled with fear, bewilderment, bitter tears, vexation, struggle, and disappointment. However, none of these emotions entered the Crown Prince's eyes. His gaze didn't even linger on her for half a second. Hui An, whose face was contorted from the pain of being burned by the purple flames, wailed miserably. No. He didn't even look at her. He didn't even shift his gaze. Ah! Father, Hui An is in so much pain. So much pain. Only then did she remember the warning her father gave her before he sent her to the gates of hell. Don't provoke that person in Shijo City again, or else even father won't be able to save you. Mo Lian didn't care about how bitter and regretful Commandery Princess Hui An was. Even now, his heart was still thumping madly. When he saw that sword heading straight for the little fellow's back, Mo Lian felt like his heart was about to jump out of his chest. This Hui An simply deserved to die 1,000,000 times. He even had the urge to skin her alive. Reaching out to hold the little fellow's small hand, Mo Lian lowered his head to examine her from head to toe. Seeing that she was unscathed, he sighed in relief. Thank goodness you're all right. Arbor looked up at him and suddenly patted his chest lightly. Her dark eyes clearly said, "Don't be afraid, what could happen to this darling?" Mo Lian suddenly hugged her tightly, chuckling softly as he hugged her. His darling was so funny. Xiaomu tried her best to raise her head in his arms and stretch out her small paws to push him away. However, for some reason, his aggrieved voice from back then kept echoing in her mind, "Don't push me away, don't push me away." Arbor withdrew his claws somewhat sullenly, thinking to himself, maybe what happened just now really scared him a little. Sigh, men. are really too easily frightened. Arbor lifted his chin helplessly, put his little hand behind his back, and patted him gently. Murong Sun immediately jumped up, but before she could angrily yell, "Damn punk, let go of my disciple," Shisha Valley's Valley Master, this good-natured person, jumped out first and shouted, "Next match." Holy Water Sect disciple Su Shanshan accepts the challenge of Daybreak Sect disciple Liang Qingqing. The crowd's gazes that were on Mo Lien and Yi Zichen immediately shifted back to the arena. However, the shock in his heart towards the youth could not be calmed down for a long time. Only a small cluster of purple flames was left. It fell to the ground and slowly burned. As for Hui Fen, she had already been burned to ashes at some point in time. Far away in Guanlon City, the old prince of the vassal king of an Henan's estate suddenly received a report from the people guarding the ancestral hall. He hastily rushed to the ancestral hall and collapsed on the ground when he saw his daughter's eternal life lamp extinguished. Hui Fen, she died. She didn't even leave behind a word before she died. Oh, his daughter. The old prince was overcome with grief. Princess Anam rushed over and burst into tears the moment she entered the room. Moreover, during the competition, Peng Zhang's level 10 Mystic Beast, the thousand-faced venomous spider, had bitten many people from the other sects, causing Arbor to be very busy with detoxification. How infuriating! It caused her to have to save people while watching the competition. Peng Zhang had made countless enemies now, and even the other members of the 5 groups hated him to the core. Chapter 433. The first match of the top 20 was between Daybreak Sect's Duan Yu and Ghost Faction's Peng Zhang. Elder Ghost was a bit nervous. Their sect only had one person who entered the top 20. If they were eliminated this time, then they really would have no face left. If they couldn't even enter the top 10, how could they face the sect master when they returned? They would most likely be hacked to death by the sect master. Peng Zhang, you have to do well. Elder Ghost silently cheered for Peng Zhang in his mind. Peng Zhang coldly looked at the youth who was slowly walking up the stage with his arms folded. The youth was wearing a brocade robe and long shoes. He held a raven bone fan in his hand, and his face was as handsome as jade. Duan Yu was wielding a weapon. This was her first time seeing a youth wielding a weapon. Arbor's eyes brightened slightly. This was definitely the rhythm of beating Peng Zhang to death. Not bad, darling Qiao liked it. This Peng Zhang should have died long ago. He bounced around endlessly and made her so busy. Peng Zhang released the thousand-faced venomous spider. As soon as it was released, the thousand-faced venomous spider excitedly crawled around his feet, hissing as it brewed its venom. "Summon your mystic beast," Peng Zhang said haughtily. Duan Yu sneered, "Do I need to summon my mystic beast to deal with you guys? Don't joke around." He didn't say anything else and flung the raven bone fan out. The raven bone fan abruptly flew in front of Peng Zhang, but it was blocked by the mystic energy Peng Zhang channeled, unable to advance even half an inch. Peng Zhang sneered and was about to mock when his pupils abruptly contracted. Countless specks of cold light flew out from the raven bone fan and whisked towards Peng Zhang's surroundings before exploding in succession. Peng Zhang's expression abruptly changed. He mustered all the mystic energy in his body to launch a full-scale defense, but how could he make it in time? How could he have known that this punk would use a killing move as soon as he started? He didn't give the other party any time to prepare. This was not an ordinary concealed weapon. When the cold light exploded on his body, he could clearly feel that every bit of the cold light that flew out from the black bone fan contained a strong, profound energy. The mystic energy he used to defend himself was completely unable to block the specks of cold light flying out of the raven bone fan. Peng Zhang could feel that the defensive power around his body was weakening, and he could only activate his profound energy in a fluster to protect his body. He even shouted angrily, "Thousand-faced venomous spider!" Hiss! The thousand-faced venomous spider swiftly crawled towards Duan Yu's leg. In the blink of an eye, the raven bone fan flew back into Duan Yu's hand. Duan Yu leaped, and his slender figure streaked across the air like a shadow. His long, loose hair suddenly swayed slightly. Hundreds of cold lights suddenly shot out from his hair and pounced on the thousand-faced venomous spider on the ground. Hua! Everyone watched nervously, and many people couldn't help but stand up. Elder Ghost's face was even more ashen. His fingers that were pinching the armrest had already turned slightly purple. "You've done well, Peng Zhang. You're the only one left in the sect." After Duan Yu closed the raven bone fan in his hand, he flicked it slightly with his raised wrist. The black bone fan abruptly transformed into a long sword. Following the youth's figure, it was suddenly delivered to Peng Zhang's throat. The blazing sun was like fire, the sunlight shining down. At that moment, everyone felt as if the youth's figure that was suspended in midair had become transparent. The long sword slashed open Peng Zhang's neck. Peng Zhang turned pale with fright as his eyes bulged. He only heard cracking sounds coming from his throat, as if something warm was slowly flowing out. Bam! Peng Zhang powerlessly crashed to the ground. Dejected, Elder Ghost drooped his head down, laying down on the stool in defeat. Chapter 434. The youth gracefully landed on the ground and withdrew his long sword, turning it into a fan again as he gently waved it. Needless to say, this handsomeness not only made the Coitus sect's love-struck infatuated, but even their own Daybreak sect's female disciples clasped their faces and called him senior martial brother. When Xixia Valley's Valley Master rushed up, Peng Zhang had already breathed his last. His venomous spider was still hanging on by a thread after being attacked by 100 cold glints, but it immediately died the moment its master died. With one man and one beast's corpses strewn across the stage, the Valley Master didn't know what to say anymore. Say that the youth was too ruthless and killed his opponent in a few moves. But he didn't even summon out his mystic beast. He clearly went easy on him. In the end, it was still because Peng Zhang was too weak. Duan Yu was careless and killed him. In a moment of carelessness. Xixia Valley's Valley Master comforted himself like this, but even he couldn't continue making up this lie. After Xixia Valley's Valley Master announced the results of the match, Duan Yu jumped down from the stage and excitedly ran toward Arbor. "Jojo, I killed that bad guy. Are you happy?" Duan Yu's question caused the Ghost faction disciples' faces to darken. "Happy," Arbor replied bluntly. "Humph." Mo Lien rolled her eyes at him. "I'll do it in one move." Bah. Duan Yu simply moved a small square stool and squeezed himself next to Arbor. "Jojo, what grudge do you have with Muliangde? Tell me about it." Everyone pricked up their ears. After 2 more matches, it would be Arbor's match against Muliangde. Everyone felt that it would definitely be worth watching. Of course, they were also very curious as to why this little junior sister of the Holy Water sect kept wanting to challenge Muliangde one-on-one. Arbor tilted his head and pondered. Enemy. The little fellow suddenly thought of something and left her seat to run to Daybreak sect Master Liang Wanshan. She cupped her hands respectfully. "Sect Master, I'm going to kill your sect's disciple, Muliangde, in a moment. It has nothing to do with our sections. This is a personal grudge between me and him. Please forgive me if I'm overboard." The stifled sect Master Liang, the Heavenly Tao sect Master, Sitamin, laughed. "Sect Master Liang, this little fellow came to greet you." Murong Sun also found her disciple unbearably adorable. When she received Liang Wanshan's speechless gaze, she broke into laughter and said, I really don't know why. However, this disciple of mine has always said whatever she wants to say. If she says that she has a grudge against your virtue, then that's it. Since it's a personal grudge, this sect master shouldn't interfere too much. Liang Wanshan was also speechless. It's just that Mu Liangde isn't as ordinary as you think. Liang Wanshan said hesitantly, you might not be able to defeat him. Sect Master Liang, don't worry. I'll definitely kill him. The little fellow swore and ran off. Liang Wanshan had a stifled look on his face. Why am I getting more and more worried? Everyone burst into laughter. Why did it sound like Sect Master Liang was going to kill Mu Liangde in the end and even told the Sect Master not to worry? It was too comical. Arbor ran back to Mo Lian's side and told Duanyu after sitting down, I just greeted your Sect Master. I said that I'll kill Mu Liangde in a moment, and he agreed. Everyone looked at her like she was a little oddball and simply didn't know what to say. Duanyu immediately lost his integrity and encouraged, Jojo, do your best. You can do it. Mo Lian, young man, where's your integrity? You're too shameless. Chapter 435. For the next 2 matches, they stopped after a certain point and were relatively harmonious. Xue Xiao and Bailey Shi fought, and Bailey Shi won. Wei Nanfeng and a Purple Firmament faction disciple fought, and Wei Nanfeng won. The 4th match was Arbor and Mu Liangde's match. The two were silent the entire time as they ascended the stage. They looked at each other and didn't speak for a long time. I heard that you're also a talisman practitioner. Let me experience it. It was rare for Arbor to be in the mood to speak before the battle. Mu Liangde's face was gentle as he courteously bowed to Arbor. Little junior sister, you should make the first move. You can summon that snow leopard of yours first. Just use the talismans when I tell you to. You like to talk so much nonsense. If you won't use it, I'll use it. Arbor swung her hand, and a row of talismans flew out and suddenly leaped in front of Mu Liangde. Mu Liangde's eyes abruptly constricted. He raised his dumbfounded face and foolishly looked at the little girl who suddenly made a move. What was going on? Mu Liangde was truly dumbfounded. Ever since he left Guanlon City's main residence, he really hadn't seen anyone who could throw out so many talismans in one go in all these years. His first thought was, is it fake? However, that row of talismans all gathered around him and abruptly tightened. Binding Talisman Matrix. Our dear Xiao Mu had long planned out how to deal with this Mu Liangde. Wasn't this person a talisman practitioner? Then she would use talisman matrices to deal with him and let him die a worthy death. However, she seemed to have overestimated this Mu Liangde. Staring at Mu Liangde, who was flustered in the binding talisman matrix and continuously using his shoulder and elbow to strike left and right, Arbor's eyes narrowed in displeasure. She asked in an extremely dissatisfied tone, are you really a talisman practitioner? Why can't you even crack such a simple binding talisman matrix? This kind of binding talisman matrix was one of the more basic types of talisman matrices, and it only used beginner talismans. Even so, she could make Mu Liangde, a talisman practitioner, into such a sorry state. Arbor couldn't help but suspect that the person in front of her might just be a fake. Mu Liangde's expression truly changed. Binding Talisman Matrix, this was actually the binding talisman matrix that Patriarch once sighed and yearned for. Why did this girl know how to use talisman matrices? What's going on? None of the talisman patrician families in Guanlon City knew how to use the talisman array. How could this young lady use it? Mu Liangde couldn't believe his eyes. Moreover, from the girl's tone, it seemed that this binding glyph array was only the most basic glyph array to her. Who was she? Hurry up and use your talisman. Arbor glared at him unhappily. You don't have to go easy on me. Which eye of yours saw me going easy on you? Thus, a hilarious scene appeared on the stage. The little girl stood at the side of the stage and glared at Mulyangda, who was trapped in the binding talisman array. What are you doing? Come out. Mulyangda was speechless. Under the little fellow's repeated urging, he couldn't help but say angrily, Little girl, don't go overboard in everything you do. Even if our patriarch were to come, he might not be able to immediately decipher this talisman formation of yours. What's more, it's just me. Xiao Mu creased her brows, truly dissatisfied to the extreme in her heart. She had originally thought that if this guy was a talisman expert, she wouldn't kill him first. She would first exchange a few pointers with him, then kill him. Hearing him say this, she felt uncomfortable all over, and the fury in her heart surged. You big liar. Go to hell. Countless talismans flew out with a whoosh. He even said that he was a talisman practitioner. This stinky, shameless liar. Just looking at him made her angry. How dare he lie to her? What a waste of time. Everyone. Chapter 436. Liar, she really wanted to kill him. However, she also really wanted to test the power of other talisman masters. She had never competed with other talisman masters in all her years of drawing talismans. It felt so novel and she really wanted to give it a try. Countless talismans flew out from under her sleeves and floated in front of the stupefied Mulyangda. Fuck. What the hell was this? Where did this girl get so many talismans? Mulyangda's eyes were dazed, and his mind was in a mess. These talismans floating in front of him were engraved with runes that he could not understand at all. No, he could understand a few of them. He understood the beginner-level speed talisman, the beginner-level strength talisman, and the beginner-level safety talisman. However, he actually could not understand a single one of the mysterious runes on the remaining 200 or so talismans. Heavens, although he was only from a side branch of the talisman patrician family, he had studied in the main family for a period of time after all, so he knew the general standard of talisman masters. Although there was no lack of people who were more talented and intelligent than him, he was definitely not the worst. But now, he felt that the talismans he drew were just a pile of shit in front of the little girl's talismans. The onlookers were simply speechless. Why was this scene so funny? What happened to the promised fierce battle? Why did they only see a circle of floating talismans surrounding Mulyangda? The latter was like a clown, bumping around in this circle of talismans, but no matter what he did, he was unable to shake off that circle of talismans. The funniest thing was that the little fellow was actually anxious outside the circle of talismans and repeatedly urged others to quickly come out. You didn't throw this talisman array at others. You're anxious now. The onlookers were speechless. They asked themselves honestly, if any of them were in Mulyangda's position, they would definitely not feel good and would definitely be driven crazy. Take out your talismans, hurry up. The little girl pulled a long face as she impatiently glared at Mulyangda, who was trapped in the binding talisman array. You! Mulyangda was about to go crazy from anger. Was this girl born to piss people off? Now that he was trapped in this talisman array, there was nothing he could do. Even if he took out talismans, he couldn't throw them out of this talisman array. He was completely bound in this area. Mulyangda felt that this girl was doing it on purpose. She said that on purpose to trample on his pride and dignity. Arbor's black eyes widened. He was so angry that he wanted to stomp his feet. Was this person an idiot? Why did it feel like that idiot was speaking to him in a completely different world? She had already asked him to take out his talisman, so why didn't he do so? She really wanted to see what other talisman masters were like. She urgently wanted to know what level she, as an intermediate level symbol master, was at among the symbol masters. She was so angry that Mu Liangde, this stupid fellow, couldn't even fulfill such a small wish for her. A Violet Firmament faction disciple who was closest to the arena kindly reminded her, "Little junior sister, I think that Mu Liangde probably can't walk out of the talisman array you set up. If you want him to come out, then remove the talisman array." The battle between the two of them made the onlookers anxious. "You're so stupid. How can you not even crack such a basic binding talisman array? You're definitely not a talisman master. You big liar. You fooled everyone in Daybreak's sect," our dear Xiao Mu angrily said. Chapter 437. Arbor's words immediately enraged Mu Liangde so much that his lungs were about to explode. How was he not a talisman practitioner? He was an orthodox talisman practitioner, all right. He came from a prestigious family. What kind of joke was this? Mu Liangde furiously took out 7 to 8 talismans from his inner world and flung them one by one at Arbor. "I'm a talisman practitioner. I'm a talisman practitioner from Guanlon City's Mu family. What would a little girl like you know?" Arbor scooped up those yellow talismans and carefully examined them one by one. She was so angry that she threw them all to the ground and stomped on them indignantly. "You liar. I knew how to draw these lousy beginner-level talismans when I was 7 years old. You still want to lie to me? You clearly stole these beginner-level talismans from who knows where, and you still dare to say that you drew them yourself. Shameless." Mu Liangde widened his eyes. However, the onlookers only felt that this scene was extremely exciting. From little junior sister's words, they completely understood one thing: she knew how to draw talismans when she was only 7 years old and was still a baby. Of course, Mu Liangde also understood. He stuttered in shock, You. Who is your master?" Arbor looked at Mu Liangde with disappointment. Her wish to spar with a talisman practitioner was completely dashed. Fortunately, she actively accepted the challenge last night and even drew 200 different talismans. What use was that? She had already completely lost the mood to talk now. Mo Lien was all too familiar with this expression of hers. With one look, she knew that the little fellow wouldn't be able to talk anymore. Sure enough, she suddenly released her small hand and threw a little chick into the air. At the same time, she summoned a ferrule from her conscious and swung it straight at Mu Liangde without another word. The 60 binding talismans moved again and circled around Mu Liangde with a whoosh. Greatly alarmed, Mu Liangde hurriedly dodged and shouted, "Mystic beast, come out!" Shriek! A shrill shriek came from midair, and the large cyan blue bird swooped down and spat out a large cloud of icy mist. In a single exchange, it froze the mystic beast that Mu Liangde had just summoned into a layer of frost. Then, it lightly waved its sharp claws. With a soft "pu" sound, the Xian beast that was sealed in the snow was immediately smashed into pieces by the Qing Huan's claw and fell to the ground. This time, everyone was really shocked. Wei Nanfeng rolled and jumped up from the stool, his eyes staring straight as he subconsciously waved the distinguished scholar fan in his hand, muttering incessantly, "Savage, savage. What kind of Xian beast was this? This little girl is too scary. Amazing, amazing." Princess Mi, who was at the side, slapped her thigh and cheered. This is what a hot-blooded battle is like. Ha ha ha. Mu Liangde's expression completely changed. He suddenly felt a terrifying aura of death approaching. The binding glyph array once again encircled his body. At the same time, the little girl had already raised her fist and rushed in front of him. Boom! A fist wrapped in dense profound energy directly bombarded Muliangda's body. Muliangda blocked with a backhand, but due to the binding glyph array, most of his profound energy was restrained and unable to be used. As a result, he didn't even receive the little girl's first punch and directly spat out a mouthful of blood. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew out backwards. The little fellow chased after him and swung her fist again. Another fist wrapped in profound energy. This time, it directly hammered a large hole in the arena, trapping Muliangda inside. Chapter 438. Immediately after a series of explosions, everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the new hole in the stage, but Muliangda had already disappeared. From the looks of it, he should have completely fallen into that hole. The little girl expressionlessly stood at the edge of the hole and stared at Shishia Valley's Valley Master, who had flown onto the stage, for a while. Shishia Valley's Valley Master speechlessly stared at her for a long time before ordering two disciples to go forward and carry Muliangda out of the hole. The onlookers couldn't help but be stupefied when they took a closer look. How could Muliangda's former graceful and exuberant face be seen? His entire face was even fatter than a pig's head, and his entire body was covered in blood. You. Muliangda was hanging on by a thread as he glared at Arbor with his eyes that had swollen into slits. He couldn't spit out another word for a long time. Muliangda, do you still remember Chao Zhongbang, who entered Daybreak's sect at the same time as you? Arbor asked in a clear and cold voice as she stood with her hands behind her back. Chao Zhongbang. Chao Zhongbang. He didn't know how many years it had been since someone had mentioned this name to him. That youth who came from the countryside, that youth who was quite talented and was quite well liked by his master back then. His age was about the same as his, so he should be in his 30s now. This little girl was called Arbor. Realization suddenly dawned on Muliangda, and he struggled to raise his head from the stretcher. His deformed face was slightly contorted as he strenuously enunciated each word. You? You're Chao Zhongbang's daughter. That's right. Arbor nodded and looked at him solemnly. Back then, you saw that my father's talent was better than yours, so you were afraid that he would steal your limelight in front of Wei Qing. Thus, you secretly poisoned him and damaged his mystic meridians, causing him to be driven out by Wei Qing. I am Chao Zhongbang's daughter. I came to avenge my father. Do you have any objections? Everyone. Could he say anything if he had any objections? Could he beg for mercy if he had any objections? The little girl didn't wait for Muliangda to continue speaking and continued, since you don't have any objections, you can go on your way with peace of mind. Wait. Muliangda narrowed his swollen eyes and coughed. You dare to kill me. I am a member of Guanlan City's Mu clan. My clan's background is so powerful, how dare you? Ah! Before Muliangda could finish his nonsense, the little girl waved her small hand and directly threw a handful of colorless and odorless powder at him. What happened afterwards really was only a fleeting moment. It was so fast that even Shishia Valley's Valley Master, who was standing beside Muliangda, couldn't react in time. Muliangda, who was half sitting on the stretcher, rolled off the stretcher in pain. He covered his face with both hands and howled incessantly. After rolling on the arena for a while, his voice completely disappeared, and his entire person lay upright on the arena. Arbor's small face was stoic as he looked at Muliangda and shook his head in disappointment. I thought that you would at least be able to resist for a moment because of your research on poisons. Yet unexpectedly, he couldn't even resist for 2 minutes. He reckoned that he had also brought that bag of vicious medicinal powder from his home back then. Did he think that he could be so awesome just because he had a powerful clan background? Wasn't he just a weakling at the mercy of others? Shishia Valley's Valley Master glared at the little girl in front of him and was tongue-tied for a long time. He couldn't help but say angrily, "Little girl, the results of the competition were already out just now. You shouldn't have poisoned him to death." Arbor blinked. Didn't he die from his severe injuries? Chapter 439. Shishia Valley's Valley Master was simply infuriated by this child and glared at her back for a while before ordering people to carry Muliangda away. It was just that the deep hole in the arena could not be repaired right away. After the top 10 competition's name list was released, each of the 3 sects had 2 disciples qualified. Just based on the number of people, it was a complete victory. Ghost Faction and Myriad Faction's disciples were eliminated. Only Purple Firmament Faction had 2 people qualified, while Coitus Faction and Omni Faction each had 1 person qualified. They were Coitus Faction's Chi Mei and Omni Faction's Ning Bihuan. Unfortunately, the next match was Omni Faction's Ning Bihuan versus Coitus Faction's Chi Mei. After Ning Bihuan ascended the stage, she hugged her silver spear and stood there with a dark expression. Although her face was not much different from her younger sister, Ning Baifan's, it was much gloomier than Ning Baifan's. She looked like someone owed her several million yuan all day long. Fortunately, she did not talk much and was not as annoying as her younger sister. After the little girl poisoned Muliangda to death, she was in a good mood and sat there listening to her senior sister's gossip. They were talking about Coitus Faction's Granny Witch. I asked around. The reason Granny Witch hated Eldest Ant Master so much was because her face was disfigured by Eldest Ant Master back then. Chang Yushi was like an information broker, showing off the first-hand information she just obtained. Where did you ask around? As Murong Sun's eldest disciple, Su Shanshan did not know her master had such a story. Xue Xiao couldn't resist laughing. Where else could she ask around? Second Ant Master most likely told her. Chang Yushi rubbed her hands and giggled mischievously. Then do you want to hear it? Tell us quickly. The senior sisters hastily urged Chang Yushi not to keep them in suspense when they heard such an interesting story. At this time, a purple talisman floated in front of the little girl's eyes. She took out several cans of snacks and fruit in succession and distributed them to the senior sisters. The senior sisters couldn't help but be amused. Oh my, look at their little junior sister. She took out food as soon as she heard a story. Although she didn't say it, she was definitely 120% curious about their master's story. When the disciples from the other 2 sects who were close to each other saw the little fellow handing out food, they also came over to divide it up. It was supposed to be a martial arts competition, but they made it seem like a gathering of the masses. Let me tell you, didn't Granny Witch from the Joyous sect capture many beautiful men as vessels back then? As he said this, his finger continuously pointed at Situ Yi, Wei Nanfeng, Duan Yu, and the others who had come forward. People like this, and this, they're definitely targets for Granny Witch to capture. The handsome men all had innocent looks on their faces. The demonic art she practices is to absorb people's yang energy. The little girl silently took a bite of the apple and raised her head to look at Chang Yushi, who was getting more and more ridiculous with her words. She silently turned her head away. Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh as she glanced at her. She raised her hand to remove a small piece of fruit peel from the corner of her lips. In short, she's using people as vessels to refine that thing in other people's bodies, such as profound energy, to increase her own profound energy. It's said that it can even preserve her youth and beauty. Chang Yushi finally hit the nail on the head and vividly described, that night, it was a dark and windy night. Granny Witch captured several beautiful men and was at the critical juncture of absorbing their mystic energy. Eldest Ant Master suddenly broke through the window and entered. Chapter 440. Just hearing Chang Yushi's description was quite comical, so it could be imagined how delightful that scene was back then. After eldest Ant Master broke the window and entered, she yelled, "I'm about to die." How did you know that eldest Ant Master yelled, "I'm about to die"? Right. How did you know? Everyone asked curiously. Second Ant Master must have made it up. Shui Xiao pursed her lips and said with a smile. How is that making it up? Chang Yushi glared at her. Eldest Ant Master yelled, "I'm about to die," and then rushed up. She lifted Granny Witch, who was at the critical juncture of her cultivation, and gave her a violent beating. And then everyone's eyes turned round as they questioned her curiously. What else is there? Apparently, eldest Ant Master broke Granny Witch's cultivation on the spot. Her fair, tender, and juicy face turned into her current appearance in minutes. Chicken skin and crane hair, tsk. She's very different from her past self. Chang Yushi spoke too loudly. So much so that Granny Witch and the rest all heard her, and they shot stern gazes in their direction. The Holy Water Sect's senior and junior sisters stuck out their tongues in laughter. They all pretended not to see the coitus faction's man-eating expression and averted their gazes. Everyone lowered their voices and continued to laugh and chat for a while. They all thought that it was no wonder Granny Witch looked like she wanted to eat someone when she saw eldest Ant Master. It turned out that there was such a thing going on. At this time, after everyone finished gossiping, they finally discovered that Ning Bihuan had been standing alone on the stage for quite a while. At this time, Ning Bihuan hugged her silver spear and asked impatiently, "Is that coitus faction's Chi Mei coming to compete or not? If she doesn't want to compete, then treat it as a forfeit and directly announce the results." However, Granny Witch's expression was very unsightly. Her expression was already unsightly enough when everyone in the Holy Water Sect knew about her gossip just now. At this time, Mei only went to relieve herself, but she was even more displeased that she still hadn't returned. After a while, when Ning Bihuan was already so impatient that she wanted Xixia Valley's Valley Master to announce the results again, a figure wrapped in a black cloak suddenly jumped onto the stage. At first glance, Granny Witch discovered that the person under the cloak wasn't her disciple Chi Mei. She stood up at once and berated with a slightly grave expression, "Who are you? You're not Mei. What did you do to Mei? The people from the other sects were naturally not familiar with Chi Mei. When they heard what Granny Witch said, they could not help but feel a little strange. Why were there still people rushing to replace Chi Mei in the arena to fight Ning Bihuan? Ning Bihuan wasn't an easy bone to chew on. However, the person on stage didn't say much, and directly sent out a wave of profound energy towards Ning Bihuan. Ning Bihuan raised her eyebrows. She raised her silver spear and charged forward. The two of them exchanged dozens of blows. Ning Bihuan curled her lips and coldly said, "Who the hell are you? You're not a disciple of Coitus sect, are you?" The person who came did not make a sound. However, Murong Sun had already recognized the person at this time. Her face instantly darkened, and her complexion was quite unsightly. Young Shirong looked at her expression and asked curiously, "What's wrong, senior sister?" "It was Ling Min," Murong Sun said coldly. "What?" The two peak masters couldn't help but feel slightly surprised. They all knew that Murong Sun did not bring Yi Ling Min with her on this trip, so her sudden appearance meant that she escaped from Sky Peak's Duantian Cliff. Chapter 441. Yi Lingmin actually escaped from Sky Peak's Duantian Cliff on her own and entered the arena to compete without permission. Her guts were already abnormally big. At this time, Coitus faction's Chi Mei ran over, flustered and exasperated. Everyone turned to look and saw that unlucky woman's stench wafting over, as if she had crawled out of a cesspit. "Master, that person, she may was so drunk from her own stench that she cried." How could she have known that when she went to relieve herself normally, someone actually covered her head with a sack from behind and beat her up? Her entire body was covered with the smell of feces and urine. Whoa. Too infuriating, truly infuriating. Disaster fell from the sky when she was relieving herself. This kind of luck was indeed unparalleled. Everyone looked at this stinky girl with sympathetic gazes. Even her master, Granny Witch, disliked her stench and hurriedly avoided her when she walked over. It was truly an unexpected disaster with overwhelming bad luck. Such a delicate beauty coughing and stinking of urine truly didn't smell good. "Hurry up and go wash up," Granny Witch angrily rebuked. She still dared to make a fool of herself in front of others with such a pestilence appearance. Her old face was completely thrown away by this idiot. "Senior sister, I'll accompany you to wash up." Chi Hua who was dressed in plain clothes and only had a small pink beaded flower on her head, walked over and draped a robe over the stinky Chi Mei Chi Mei also knew that if she continued to stand here, she would definitely be an eyesore to her master. Hearing this, she could only follow Chi Hua to wash up and change clothes, hating the woman who snatched the arena from her to the bone. The two of them didn't walk far when they saw a hunchbacked old man being supported over. To avoid the old man's disdain, Chi Hua hurriedly pulled her senior sister a little closer and left after casting a glance out of the corner of her eye. "Sir, those two are disciples of Coitus faction," Chio-san whispered. "Vulgar women, withered flowers and withered willows." Luigi coughed a few times and stood still, his cold gaze fixed on the arena. "My lord, the strength of these two lower domain disciples is comparable to our soldiers," Chio-san said. He's just an outer court soldier material and doesn't even have the qualifications to guard the inner court." Luigi's eyes were full of disdain. Suddenly, Luigi's body stiffened, and his expression changed slightly because Mo Lien and Arbor both turned their heads and gazed coldly at them. At the same time, Duan Yu also turned around with a grin and raised his brow. His gaze swept over Luigi and Chio-san before withdrawing. Luigi didn't see Duan Yu and Peng Zhang's battle, so he didn't know how strong this youth was. However, he had a deep impression of Mo Lien. A youth who could control a powerful fire spirit, even he did not dare to easily offend him. At this moment, they were very far away from the arena, but even so, those three people could still sense them. It had to be said that even Luigi was surprised by their sharp acuity. At this time, the competition on the arena had already entered a white-hot stage. The silver spear in Ning Bihuan's hand suddenly lifted Yilingmin's headscarf and cloak, exposing her entire face to everyone. "Senior Sister Yi." Many holy water sect disciples covered their mouths as they exclaimed softly. Yilingmin was holding a willow leaf saber. Because her shoulder had been struck by the mystic energy seeping out from the silver spear, her shoulder was already red. She was extremely furious, and her mind was in a mess, so her saber technique was out of order. Chapter 442. She did not spend so much effort to participate in the competition to lose to this woman in front of her. She wanted to prove to her master that not choosing her to participate in the competition was absolutely a wrong decision. Ning Bihuan creased her brows and coldly said, "Admit defeat. I don't want to take your life, so leave the stage yourself." With a shake of her silver spear, she directly sent Yilingmin flying. Yilingmin rolled 3 times on the stage before plopping down on the ground. Her eyes revealed her unwillingness to admit defeat, and she ferociously glared at Ning Bihuan. "You think you've won for sure?" The two of them did not summon their mystic beasts from beginning to end, as if they had made a pact together. Ning Bihuan shook her head. You're a holy water sect disciple, right? You didn't go through the early stages of the competition and directly skipped levels to participate in the finals. This is already against the rules. I didn't bicker with you, so you should quit while you're ahead. I'm telling you, you can't win against me. Yilingmin's stubborn temper flared up, and she suddenly flipped her hand, pinching a small bottle in her hand. The eyelids of the three peak masters sitting in the front seats all twitched. Murong Sun's face darkened, and she had just shouted Lingmin when she saw Yilingmin uncorking the bottle and drinking the 3 drops of holy water she had preserved until now in one gulp. Holy water sect disciples all knew that holy water was most effective and improved the fastest when it was consumed for the first and second time. Yilingmin had been reluctant to consume it a second time and had been accumulating holy water the entire time. Every time she asked Lady Holy Water for more holy water, she would preserve it until today. She swallowed it all in one gulp. The 3 peak masters' expressions were abnormally unsightly. Soon, all the mystic energy from all directions gathered above Yilingmin's head, forming a small vortex of stars that continuously gathered inside her body. Until it completely erupted. Yilingmin advanced in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone's eyes were filled with intense incredulity. Everyone knew how difficult and dangerous it was for a great level 10 mystic cultivator to advance to a great level 11 mystic cultivator. But what happened just now? Why did Yilingmin suddenly break through the barrier of great level 10 mystic cultivator? Before everyone could react, Yilingmin had already jumped up on the spot and energetically swung her saber. The lancet spun in the air and whooshed towards Ning Bihuan. Ning Bihuan's silver spear flew up. With a solemn expression, she flicked it at Yilingmin's blade. Immediately, she felt her wrists suddenly become heavy and she almost lost her grip on the silver spear. Let go! Yilingmin shouted in an awe-inspiring manner. She suddenly pulled back her lancet and chopped at Ning Bihuan's left wrist. Ning Bihuan had no choice but to retreat, but the silver spear in her hand was suddenly snatched away by Yilingmin. With a kick, she sent it flying. With a whoosh, it landed on the stage and stuck into the ground at an angle. Everyone was silent. Murong Sun's expression was indescribably unsightly. However, Koitis Sect's Granny Witch's eyes were filled with doubt. Could this be the legendary holy water spring of the holy water sect? Its effects were truly so good that one could immediately advance from a level 10 great mystic cultivator to level 11 after drinking a mouthful. Crushing Ning Bihuan, who was also a great level 10 mystic cultivator, in a matter of minutes. The godly water was really that effective. I won. Amidst the silent audience, Yilingmin raised the lancet in her hand above her head and shouted. On the side, Ning Bihuan clutched her chest and silently glanced at her. She directly walked to her silver spear and pulled it out from the ground. Then, she swiftly jumped off the stage and left. Chapter 443. Shixia Valley's Valley Master was baffled and did not know whether he should go on stage to announce the results of the competition. Seeing that no one else was going up, Yilingmin jumped down from the stage and walked straight to Murong Sun. She straightened her neck and bowed to the 3 peak masters. Master and Master. Murong Sun's expression was unsightly to the extreme. She coldly stared at Yilingmin and did not say anything. She merely stared at her for a long time. This extremely powerful silent stare caused Yilingmin to panic. In reality, it would be best if she could enter closed-door cultivation right now. In order to win the competition just now, she swallowed 3 drops of holy water at once and forcefully raised her cultivation to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator, obtaining an overwhelming victory. However, in reality, she did not completely assimilate these 3 drops of holy water. If she wanted to completely stabilize her cultivation as a level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator, she still needed a period of closed-door cultivation. She merely wanted to win too much. She wanted to display herself in front of her master and obtain her master's approval and affirmation too much. She wanted her master to know that she, Yi Lingmin, her master's third disciple, was not inferior to anyone else. But right now, her master's aloof gaze made her feel afraid from the bottom of her heart. Yi Lingmin quietly called out, "Master." "Lingmin, it's because I don't know how to teach disciples that your willful, reckless, and lawless personality is today." Murong Sun's disappointed gaze made Yi Lingmin's heart tremble. Why was it like this? She won the fight. Why was her master so disappointed in her even though she won? Didn't she win? "Master." Yi Lingmin completely panicked and looked at the other two ant masters in a daze. However, the two people she saw had the same grave expression. "Master." Yi Lingmin wanted to reach out and grab Murong Sun's sleeve. However, Murong Sun pushed her back 2 steps. She dazedly stood there and looked up at her unfamiliar master in a daze. "From today onward, you are no longer my disciple. You are also no longer a disciple of the Holy Water sect. Go," Murong Sun said aloofly. As if struck by lightning, Yi Lingmin staggered back 2 steps and looked up at Murong Sun with tear-filled eyes. She could not help but ask, "Why, master? Why?" Third senior sister thought the other disciples of First Peak were also dumbfounded. They wanted to surround Murong Sun and dissuade her, but none of them dared to move when they saw Murong Sun's warning gaze. Yi Lingmin suddenly knelt in front of Murong Sun with a plop and wailed, "Master, master, don't chase me away, master. Disciple was wrong, master. Your disciple was disobedient and shouldn't have run away from Dwantian Cliff. Master, please forgive me this once. Master, master, don't chase your disciple away." Murong Sun had already made up her mind. Even if other people came over to put in a few good words for Yi Lingmin, Murong Sun still insisted on expelling Yi Lingmin from the sect. "Master, you can leave. Go back and think about what you did wrong. If you feel guilty in the future, take good care of your former sister when we meet again in the pugilistic world." Murong Sun turned around and did not look at Yi Lingmin again. "Master." Yi Lingmin was completely flustered. She turned around and saw Arbor in a daze. She rushed in front of her and grabbed her arm, begging for mercy. "Little junior sister, help third senior sister. Little junior sister, go beg master. Master likes you the most. If you speak up for me, she will definitely listen to you. Little junior sister, senior sister is begging you, wah." Chapter 444. Third Senior Sister. Arbor blinked and looked up at Murong Sun, who was standing on the side with her back facing them. She only felt that Master's back was stiff, as if she was hiding 1,000 things that she couldn't say. "Third Senior Sister, Master is in a fit of anger right now. How about you leave first, and I'll slowly persuade Master?" Arbor asked softly. Yi Lingmin glanced at Arbor with teary eyes. "Little junior sister, you'll really help me?" Arbor nodded solemnly. Sorry. Yi Lingmin didn't expect that her little junior sister, whom she dissed the first time they met, would disregard former enmity and help her. She tightly grasped the little girl's hands and gripped them tightly. She turned around to glance at Murong Sun's cold back and didn't dare to linger any longer, running away in tears. On the other end, Luigi and Chiu San's figures had long disappeared. Chiu San supported Luigi as they walked out of the arena. Luigi was so excited that he couldn't control himself the entire way, and his entire body was trembling lightly. "It's not the holy water spring, it definitely isn't the holy water spring. How was this some holy water spring? Just now, he clearly saw that the holy water sect girl in the competition clearly swallowed 3 drops of water. 3 drops. 3 drops of water immediately raised her from level 10 to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator. Such a large leap. Ha 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 ha. He was now very clear that the holy water spring was definitely a smokescreen thrown out by the holy water sect to conceal the holy water's true identity. They deceived the world for so many years, ha 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 ha. Great, great, great. A tiny lower star domain's holy water sect could actually do whatever they wanted under the 6 prefectures' noses. How audacious. How was this some holy water spring? It was clearly holy water. Speaking of holy water, one had to mention the 5 spirits' origins. Everyone in the 6 prefectures knew that as long as one comprehended one of the 5 spirits' origins when breaking through to level 15 Great Mystic Cultivator, they could smoothly enter a higher realm and achieve the transition from the mystic realm to the spiritual realm. And among the 10 levels of the water origins, the one and only and unparalleled origin among the origins was holy water. Normally, everyone's comprehension of the 5 spirits' origins was between the 1st and the 5th level. Only those with especially good talent could comprehend the origins of the higher levels. What was the holy water? That was the foundation that could crush all the water spirits below the 9th level. Once the Holy Spirit appeared, no one would be able to contend against it. This was the holy water, holy fire, holy wood, holy earth, and holy lightning of the 5 spirit origins. Quickly go and inform all of Shantian Prefecture's forces on Seacombe Planet. Immediately travel day and night to the holy water sect outside 5 Moon City. We must obtain the sacred water before the other 5 prefectures. Holy water was such an important item, so the holy water sect definitely wouldn't bring it with them when they went out this time. Presumably, it was currently quietly staying in the holy water sect's secret ground, waiting for their Shantian prefecture to come and harvest it. Ha 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 ha. No, she was waiting for him. Lu Yizhi went to seize it. Yes. Qiu San immediately cupped his fists and left in a hurry. Lu Yizhi looked up at the dark blue sky and narrowed his cold eyes slightly. He coughed several times and sneered. It seems like the weather is about to change. The rest of the competition became dull and boring. Moreover, many people's minds were no longer on the competition. In the end, it was darling Qiao who obtained victory. Why? Because the other top 4, such as Duanyu, Su Shanshan, Situ Yi, and Bailey Shi, couldn't be bothered to fight with her, so she automatically advanced to first place. Chapter 445. However, she did not feel excited or joyful at all. In the end, the 3 sects won a complete victory, but there was no joy on the Holy Water sect's 3 peak masters' faces. When she returned to her courtyard, all the senior sisters ran over to give her gifts. They glorified it by saying that little junior sister had won honor for the Holy Water sect, so they gave gifts to the champion. Su Shanshan gave her a level 15 mystic dagger and told her that she took it from Maple Pavilion and that it was quite handy. Arbor's intuition was a bit strange. Her senior sisters all ran over to give her gifts, and they were all very valuable. What happened? Arbor asked seriously. What could happen? Young Shirong smiled and said, "My little disciple. You've been in the sect for so many years, but you've never returned home. How about you go home and take a look this time?" Arbor nodded. She also had this plan, but she had more or less assimilated her essence water recently, so she could not suppress her cultivation anymore. She planned to find a place to raise her cultivation before going home. "Master, are you still angry at 3rd senior sister?" Arbor walked to Murong Sun and tugged on her sleeve. Can't forgive her. You know what kind of person she is. Master always knew that she was unyielding and competitive, but why was she so angry today? Arbor felt that she must have overlooked something. Suddenly, a thought struck her, and Arbor hastily asked, "Is it the holy water?" Because third senior sister used holy water on the spot and attracted attention. Then what about the sex master and senior sisters? Arbor only felt that things were a bit off. Silly child, what could happen? Murong Sun said with a smile, "Don't let your imagination run wild. Go rest early. The other sects have to leave Dwelling Valley tomorrow morning. We also have to leave. Child, you haven't returned for so many years, so your parents must be worried. Stay at home for a while when you go back this time. You don't have to rush back since there's nothing going on in the sect anyway." Murong Sun tugged on Arbor's hand and quietly instructed, "Being outside is different from being in the sect. Be careful of everything and take good care of yourself along the way." "Young Master Mo is here," Su Shanshan said. Arbor walked out, a little unhappy. Mo Lien took her little hand and squeezed it. "What's wrong?" "Because I'm leaving tomorrow. Can't bear to part with me." The little fellow was not in the mood to talk and laugh. She looked up at him sullenly. He suddenly thought of something and rummaged through his purple amulet. He took out a small rectangular iron box and threw it to Mo Lien. "I don't know how to open this." Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. She lowered her head to look at the small rectangular metal box. It was cast so tightly that there wasn't a single opening. "Duan, you should know." The little fellow was still a bit sullen. "Help me hand it to him so he can study it. If you go back to the sect, then we'll have to go our separate ways tomorrow. Don't leave me with a sour gourd face. The only thing I can't forget is your little sour gourd face." Mo Lien suddenly reached out to lift her small face. "Chow chow, give me a serious smile. I really haven't seen you smile in all these years." Arbor rolled her eyes at him. How could she smile for no reason? "How about I tell you a joke for you to smile?" Mo Lien reached out to tease her little face. "Go ahead." The little stoic was not happy at all. Once upon a time, there was a bad guy called Duan Yu. One day, he was beaten to death by a good person called Mo Lien. Arbor. Chapter 446. It really was hilarious. Arbor glanced at him and poked his chest with his finger. "It's not funny." Mo Lien reached out and pulled the little fellow into her arms, chuckling softly as she hugged her. Suddenly, an indignant voice came from the door. Duan Yu dashed over and shouted in a huff, "Of course it's not funny. Jojo, don't listen to his nonsense. I'm an incomparably good person." "Incomparably good." Mo Lien threw him a slightly disdainful look before casually smashing that small rectangular metal box at his head. Duan Yu was so angry that he wanted to send it flying with a kick. However, just as his foot was about to touch the small metal box, Mo Lien's voice leisurely rang out, "Jojo's." Duan Yu staggered, and his kick abruptly changed into a grab. His movements were practiced and smooth as he snatched the small lousy box into his hand. "This should be a concealed weapon box," Mo Lien said dryly. Duan Yu smugly looked up and cast him a sidelong glance. He snorted and waved the small metal box in his hand, bragging, "Don't tell me it's broken. Let me tell you, this concealed weapon box is a sealing technique passed down from ancient times. Normal people absolutely can't open the seal on the outside. I'm 99% certain that there's good stuff inside." This small metal box had troubled darling Qiao for many years. When she had nothing to do, she would fiddle with it in her hands. She had soaked it in water, roasted it in fire, and even pricked it with a needle before throwing it into a frying pan. Cough, cough. Now that she heard Duan Yu's words, the little fellow pattered over to him with great interest and urged repeatedly, "Hurry and open it. You can open it too." Duan Yu tossed the small metal box and pulled Arbor to his side with one hand. He said with a chuckle, "You have to call me Big Brother." Classmate Mo's face darkened. Duan Yu, that punk, really knew how to push his luck. He originally thought that the icy little fellow would refuse, so Duan Yu was only joking. Who would have thought that the next second, Darling Qiao straightforwardly called him Big Brother in a clear and crisp voice. She even impatiently tugged at his sleeve. "Let's go." Duan Yu was taken aback. Mo Lian was furious. His handsome face was ashen as he reached out and pulled the little fellow into his arms. His entire body was filled with low pressure. No matter how slow-witted Qiao Mu was, she could still feel the displeasure that filled her entire body. The little fellow lifted his head from his arms and looked at his expression in bewilderment. He asked in astonishment, "What's wrong?" "You called him brother." Mo Lian gritted her teeth. Arbor nodded and turned his stoic face to look at the foolishly smiling Duan Yu. He asked with a frown, "What's wrong with him? If it's not my brother, then is it my sister?" Mo Lian. Why am I speechless? Mo Lian's shoulders trembled, and she lowered her head to hug the little lady with a stifled chuckle. For a moment, she couldn't restrain her laughter. His darling was still young, that when Duan Yu returned to his senses and heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He glanced at Mo Lian and harumphed. "What are you laughing at? If I'm the older sister, then you're also the older sister. TSK. Do you think that face of yours is inferior to mine when it comes to pretending to be a girl?" "Bah. Who's a girl? Your whole family is made up of girls. Jojo, let's go. Don't get touchy. Lead the way." Mo Lian swatted away Duan Yu's restless paw, which earned Duan Yu's furious glare. Chapter 447. The three of them shifted to another room and sat down. After placing the small metal box on the table, Duan Yu took out a dozen or so exquisite tools from his inner world. The little girl propped up her cheeks with both hands as she curiously watched Duan Yu work with her dark eyes. She really couldn't come up with something like this. She was a bit angry just thinking about it. With her brilliant brain, she couldn't even open a concealed weapon box. It was truly infuriating. This kind of concealed weapon box that has been passed down since ancient times was sealed by the ancestors using a kind of pouring technique. It can't be opened even if you slash it with a sword, soak it in water, or burn it with fire. When Duan Yu said this, he reflexively looked up at Miss Qiao and discovered a strange expression on her face. Duan Yu couldn't help chuckling in spite of himself. Don't tell me you've already used all the methods I've just mentioned." As he said this, he couldn't help coughing several times while stifling his laughter. Darling Qiao harumphed and rolled her eyes at him. "Ha ha 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 ha." Duan Yu couldn't hold back his hearty laughter. Blame her for being uncultured. Now that she was being laughed at. Qiao Mu simply turned her face aside. However, she saw that although Mo Lian didn't laugh out loud like the dunce Duan Yu, he still couldn't conceal the smile in his eyes. That smile was practically flowing out from his pair of slightly curved phoenix eyes. Tisk, Duan Yu controlled his laughter and quickly placated the little fellow. "You can't be blamed for being stupid." Our dear Qiao Mu's eyes widened. This darling wasn't stupid to begin with. Only the Duan family of Guanlan City knows a thing or two about this kind of pouring technique. However, they also don't know how to unseal it. That family head of theirs is absolutely stupid. Even after learning concealed weapons for so many years, he probably can't open it. Duan pursed his lips in disdain when he recalled the faces of those people from the Duan family. Arbor quickly urged, "Hurry up and do it. Don't tell me you're going to waste time until daybreak." Duan Yu's smile faded and he lowered his head to take the small metal box in his hand. He took out a small pointed awl forged from ice crystals and lightly fiddled with the four corners of the metal box. She didn't see how he did it, but his movements were so practiced that it dazzled the eyes. There was only a light, click sound. There was a small hole in the top of the small iron box that was so tightly sealed that there wasn't even the slightest gap. The three heads immediately gathered together, and Duan Yu simply stood up with a half-bent waist. He turned the small metal box upside down and picked up a small metal bowl in passing. A stream of corrosive liquid flowed out of the small hole, and when it fell into the small iron bowl, it made a sizzling sound. Wow, that hidden weapon master used poison to seal this hidden weapon box. Arbor recalled that she had thrown this thing into the frying pan. Cough, cough, cough. Fortunately, this concealed weapon master's craftsmanship was exceptional. Otherwise, wouldn't Fat Sis's 30-year-old family heirloom have been ruined? Duan Yu couldn't help teasing her when he saw the little fellow's odd expression while his hands busied themselves. What? Did you fry it in a pot of oil? Baby Chow. Why am I suddenly speechless? The two youths looked at her little face and couldn't help but burst into laughter. You really did bomb before. Humph. Arbor propped up her chin with both hands and simply turned her head to the side to ignore them. Duan Yu's movements were rather fast. As he spoke, he had already poured out all the corrosive poison from the small hole. Then, he took out a long and thin needle. His eyes were focused, and his movements were extremely slow as he inserted the needle. Chapter 448. Arbor nervously held her breath. Was this strange little iron box that had perplexed her for so many years finally going to be solved? Her large, dark eyes emitted a joyous glint. Crack, 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 crack. Duan Yu put down the needles in his hand and quickly placed the little iron box flat on the table. His eyes narrowed as he looked at it. The sound of a delicate spring opening could be heard from the iron box's interior. Suddenly, the two youths reached out at the same time and pulled Arbor to her feet, dragging her backward. This curious darling was stretching out her large head at the time and was caught off guard, causing her to topple backward. Mo Lien swiftly caught her and carried her up by the waist before swiftly retreating out the door. Just as the three of them stepped out of the door, Mo Lien hugged the little fellow tightly in her arms and pressed her down, causing the three of them to lie down on the ground together. They then heard an earth-shattering explosion from inside the door. The perfectly fine door was instantly blown into pieces and completely destroyed. Not only did it alarm everyone from the 3 sects and 5 factions, it even scared Shishia Valley's Valley Master to the point of jumping up from his stool and roaring angrily, "Which bastard is blowing up the room?" Shishia Valley's Valley Master was shocked to the point of jumping up from his chair and roaring angrily, "Which bastard is blowing up the room?" He had already swiftly dashed out the door towards the source of the sound. When the 3 sects and 5 factions, as well as Shishia Valley's large group of disciples, rushed to the door of this room, they saw that the room was in a complete mess. After the explosion, Mo Lien and the other two promptly scooped up the metal box that had been blown out of the door and hastily ran away. Who would still foolishly stay in the same spot and wait for someone to berate them? At this time, they were running and flying, only stopping when they were far away from the southern courtyard. This place was a secluded cave in Shishia Valley that was usually uninhabited. The three of them finally sighed in relief and exchanged glances. Arbor couldn't help but be amused by this glance. The 2 handsome youths, who had always tidied themselves up neatly, were now covered in dirt, as if they had jumped out from some corner of the earth. Their long hair was messy, and there was a lot of mud on their faces, making them look funny. Mo Lian's white robe was covered in dust. Her entire body was covered in dust. Duan Yu wasn't that good-looking either. His brocade robe's collar was covered in small clumps of dirt, and he was trembling as he stood there. Ha 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 ha. A clear and melodious laughter that was both familiar and somewhat unfamiliar suddenly rang out. The two youths who were tidying up their clothes suddenly turned their heads, their eyes widening at the same time as they looked in shock at the little girl in front of them who was holding her stomach and laughing. Mo Lian, who had recovered her wits, flew to the little girl with a whoosh and scooped her into a hug. She excitedly murmured as she hugged her, "Jojo, you smiled, Jojo, you smiled, you smiled." It was no longer that cold and stiff smile that cracked the corners of her mouth, nor was it that expressionless little stoic face. She really smiled. Her smile was so lively and adorable as snow. In that instant, Mo Lian only felt as if the entire world had been lit up by her. The grayish-white color suddenly turned into a myriad of colors, and it was extremely beautiful. The slow-witted Duan Yu didn't manage to snatch the little girl, so he circled around the two of them and stretched out his hand, shouting, "Hurry and move aside, move aside." He hadn't seen the little girl smile so happily for half his life. Now that he finally saw it, he only saw it for a second before that rascal Mo Lian blocked him. Truly too hateful. Chapter 449. Jojo. Mo Lian reached out to cup the little girl's small face, which still carried a trace of a smile. He lowered his head and nuzzled her smooth forehead, saying, "I hope that you will always be like this in the future, happy and happy." It would be even better if she had a permanent smile. Duan Yu couldn't snatch the little girl and could only glare from the side, but he still nodded when he heard this. Although that guy was very hateful, his words seemed to make sense, so he reluctantly agreed. Arbor suddenly reached out to pinch a speck of mud from Mo Lian's face and shouted unhappily, "The mud on your face got on my face." Pfft. Ha 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 ha. This time, it was Duan Yu's turn to be amused, and he guffawed while pointing at Mo Lian. Mo Lian simply shamelessly picked up the little girl and purposely rubbed against her face. "Right, we're all muddy, so you should join us too." Right. This is called enjoying blessings and enduring misfortune together." Duan Yu interjected. Arbor actually guffawed, his pair of dark eyes brimming with mirth as he gazed at Mo Lian like this. It was as if the haze in his heart had dispersed by quite a bit. "Jojo." Mo Lian caressed her small face, unable to contain the smile on her lips. Thankfully, we slipped away quickly. Otherwise, if we encountered Old Man Shishia, we would have been nagged by him again. Duan Yu exclaimed as he patted the dust off his sleeves. Mo Lian turned around to glare at him. "You still have the cheek to say that. You even boasted that you were invincible, as if you could immediately open the concealed weapon box in your hands. Now we're all in such a sorry state." It was an accident. Duan Yu chuckled awkwardly and rubbed his nose. His peach blossom eyes flickered as he cast a bright and charming wink at Arbor. "Don't worry, Jojo, it was just a small spring that wasn't turned on earlier, so it ended up like that. I'll do it again this time, and it'll be done right away." Mo Lian hugged Arbor, and the two jumped back in unison. What are you doing? Don't look at me with such distrust. Trust, you know. Trust. Go. Let's go into the cave and make sure we succeed this time." Duan Yu simply ran to their side and grabbed one in each hand, making the two unwilling people follow him into the cave. Succeed or die trying. The illuminating pearl flew high up in the air, illuminating the cave. Mo Lian pulled Arbor to sit a little further away, closer to the entrance of the cave. It would be more convenient for them to escape later. Why are you sitting so far away? Duan pestered them again and sat down across from them. He picked out a long needle and started fiddling with that hole again. Don't worry, I'm an experienced worker. It really was just a slip of the hand earlier. Duan looked up with a chuckle and winked at Arbor. Jojo, trust, I'm the person you trust the most. Arbor's gaze flickered, and he stared fixedly at the youth. A smile hung on Duan lips as he skillfully inserted the slender needle. His frivolous smile disappeared and replaced it with a serious expression as he cracked the spring that fit the inside. Kacha, 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 kacha. Several sounds rang out in succession, and Arbor's heart was pulled by these sounds, and his small face was filled with anxiety. Mo Lien patted his back to comfort him. Suddenly, they heard a very light and crisp crack right next to their ears. The small metal box suddenly peeled open like a flower petal, revealing a transparent, crystalline square box inside. Chapter 450. Through the transparent crystal, one could see a thin piece of paper swaying in the crystal, rolling up and unrolling. It was very lively. What is this? Arbor exclaimed. The Tianji treasure blueprint. The two youths exclaimed in unison, their faces full of shock. What is the Tianji treasure blueprint? Arbor tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve. Speaking of the Tianji treasure blueprint, we have to talk about this person, Tianji Zi. He was a very impressive trap and concealed weapons master 300 years ago. Duan interrupted, this person was proficient in the art of traps and concealed weapons, and his skills were not simple at all. I was wondering who made this kind of concealed weapon box that had long been lost. So it was him. The art of traps and concealed weapons? Then this whatever map is actually a secret manual on traps and concealed weapons. It was truly bizarre. How did the Holy Water sect even have this thing? Then this thing is definitely useless to me. Arbor was discouraged. She didn't understand traps and concealed weapons, so what did she need this thing for? Here you go. Take it and study it. The little fellow unhappily pushed the transparent crystal towards Mo Lien and Duan. The two youths couldn't help but laugh. Jojo, do you know that if news of this Tianji treasure blueprint leaked out, it would cause a commotion? Mo Lien helplessly looked at this ignorant little girl. Where did you get it? The little girl was disappointed. To her, it was useless even if it caused a commotion in the 6 prefectures and 3 provinces. A lousy map was completely useless to her. No matter how much of a commotion it caused, it couldn't excite her. When I went to Maple Pavilion to choose mystic techniques, it followed me all the way neurotically. She was depressed at the mention of this. At that time, she was running out of time, and this metal box tricked her just like that. Oh. This darling was still unhappy. Duan couldn't help but be amused. Jojo, let me tell you, you really picked up a treasure this time. Really? What? What treasure? To the two youths who liked to study traps and concealed weapons, it was a treasure. But to her, it was just a piece of shit map. Seeing the little girl's gloomy face, the two youths laughed and stopped teasing her. Mo Lien said, Duan is right this time. This really is a treasure. That's because this map itself is a divine artifact that Tianji spent his entire life forging. Ah. Xiao Mu was dumbfounded. This map was a divine artifact? What was a divine artifact? Mo Lien flicked her finger lightly on her little head and couldn't help but chuckle. What the hell is a divine artifact? You don't have to care about that. All you need to know is that he's extremely powerful. Come, be obedient and form a contract with it first. At the same time, I will help you seal the divine artifact and suppress it to a level suitable for your current cultivation. Otherwise, you won't be able to use it. But what about the hidden weapon technique inside? She had no use for it. The little fellow asked with a conflicted expression. Stupid. Duan chuckled. Wouldn't it be fine if you formed a contract with it first and then handed the secret manual to us? This is a divine weapon, why are you still hesitating? Hurry, 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 it'll be daybreak if you hesitate any longer. No matter how she looked at it, this thin piece of paper didn't look like a divine weapon at all. Arbor expressionlessly reached out her small hand and stuck it against the outer crystal shell of the map, injecting a wisp of mystic energy. It really was only a small wisp of mystic energy, so small that it was almost negligible, but the entire crystal shell immediately peeled off. The map inside rapidly jumped up and abruptly emitted a dazzling golden light. Allow me to go out for a walk. The rest of the chapter will be even better at night. Chapter 451. The 2 youths couldn't help but be dumbfounded by this situation. TSK, they completely agreed with Darling Qiao's words this time. Back then, it was definitely this fellow, this Tianji treasure blueprint that kept pestering their darling. Otherwise, how could she be so unreserved? Oh my, you're a divine artifact. Why did you open on your own when she injected just a little bit of mystic energy? The two of them had already secretly decided that when the little girl's mystic energy wasn't enough to form a contract with this divine artifact, they would have to provide mystic energy from the side to support her. However, the situation was just this strange. In less than 3 seconds, the little girl successfully formed a contract with the Tianji treasure blueprint. The Tianji treasure blueprint turned into a shooting star and directly entered her conscious. The two of them stared at her dumbfoundedly for a while. Arbor didn't notice at first because she was using her mystic conscious to examine the Tianji treasure blueprint in her conscious. She couldn't see anything special about it, but after this blueprint unfolded in her conscious, she could casually flip through the mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques inside. After a glance, Darling Qiao lost interest in looking at it. Those mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques were all strange drawings that looked like scribbles. The few words were also abstruse and profound, so who could understand such a ghastly thing? When she returned to her senses, she saw the 2 youths looking at her with shining eyes in a daze. Our dear Qiao Mu simply didn't know that with her pitiful cultivation as a level 8 mystic cultivator, it was basically impossible for her to form a contract with this kind of divine artifact without assistance from the side. He had never seen or heard of such an oddball like her. Ahem. Duan Yu coughed lightly and said with a chuckle, this is probably fate, right, huh? Isn't that right, Prince Mo? The Tianji treasure blueprint must have taken a fancy to the little girl. How should he put it? Mo Lian glanced at him and nodded in rare agreement. Qiao Mu was baffled. She didn't even know what the heck they were conversing about. She merely activated her mystic conscious and summoned that Tianji treasure blueprint out from her conscious. The mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques on this are all scribbles. You can see for yourselves. She couldn't understand it anyway. Immediately after, with a move of his profound sense, the Tianji treasure blueprint suddenly unfolded in front of the 3 of them. It stretched for several meters and was covered in golden light. The diagrams leaped up and floated in front of the 3 of them. The 2 youths hurriedly ran over and stood on the left and right sides of the picture. They looked at it for a while with an intoxicated look on their faces. Arbor. Blame her for being uncultured. Jojo, how about I make a copy of it? The 2 teenagers asked in unison. How? With a flip of their hands, they each took out a piece of jade. Arbor ran over to take a look and hurriedly asked, isn't this the underworld jade, something used to pass on techniques? Of course not. Duan Yu couldn't help but chuckle. These two pieces are ordinary crimson jade and purple jade. The kind of netherworld jade you speak of can only be discovered by chance. Not only can it be used to inherit secret techniques, but it can also be used to nourish the conscious. TSK, where can I get one? Xiao Mu once again exposed her lack of culture, so she didn't say anything else. Of course, she wouldn't ask them how to make a copy. She might as well keep the Tianji treasure blueprint open and let them work on their own. This Bao Bao is a great talisman master. When this Bao Bao draws talismans, none of you can understand it. Hence, the two youths each stood on one side of the picture. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.